And we are live, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a slightly more than special YouTube event. A little problem with. Let's see. Let's go to my live stream. So we're just kind of hanging out until the stream starts, everyone. It's going to be a couple of minutes on Facebook. I just got a missive from Ty. He will be joining us a little bit later. So we're going to hang out, and I'm going to talk about a few things that once the stream starts for Facebook, I'm going to talk about a few things that are of relevance to this matter. And I'm going to put forward a few ideas, a few considerations. Good evening, Simile. It's always good to see you. So while we wait for Ty, and I will, let me see here. I'm gonna let you guys know exactly what he said to me. Whoops. So we can all be on the same sheet of music. Lots of messages and so on. Do. So Ty sends to us that he had to deal with a serious client emergency and can do it at 4 p.m. his time, which is 5 p.m. my time here. And he apologizes for the late notice and says he's well prepared for the talk, which is awesome. I would not expect anything less from him as far as being ready. And I'm hoping soon that Facebook will kick on. So this afternoon is going to be kind of a chill affair until we get Ty on at around 5 o'clock Eastern Standard. See, he goes on Nick Recada's live streams, but Nick streams at like ungodly hours of the night. I don't know when he actually lets himself sleep. But that is out of his business hours, out of Ty's business hours. So anyway, welcome if you're just joining us on Facebook. It's good to see you. And welcome, of course, to everyone over on YouTube. So if you're just joining us on Facebook, I was just bringing folks up to speed. Ty Beard will be here. He's joining us a little later via Zoom. That's the Zoom window you see up there on your screens. Katie says, I can only be here for a little bit. Gotta head to work. Never fear, Katie. The live stream is always up on YouTube. You can always come in. And if you ever have a question like, oh, I wanted to be in that stream, I wanted to ask, put a comment on YouTube and give it a timestamp, like, at 28:27 when you said that, up was down, left was right. I was a little unclear. Could you explain? And I'll come in. And if it's a question you have for a guest, I can ask them for feedback, and I will come back and say, oh, he said this, or they said that, or the other. And greetings to you too, James Keck. As always, love your observatory. Fantastic facility in Hawaii. You've got to visit if you ever get a chance. But I kid the viewers. So yes, Ty will be joining us in a little while. A legal emergency, an actual honest to goodness legal emergency. Like, for me, an emergency is, I can't get my camera to turn on, or my studio lights keep turning off, or my streaming software is not working. For Ty, it's like, this could cost someone the difference between 10 years in prison or going home tonight to their families. So, passerby says, nobody moves, nobody gets hurt. Trust me, I am here for your safety and I know what I'm doing. In the words of the great John Dillinger, lie down on the floor and keep calm. So, yeah, we'll be having Ty join us in a little bit. And once we get, let's get a few more folks in the chats, I will go over the thesis of today's live stream that I'm having with Ty, and he said he's well prepared for it, so it's going to be interesting to hear his feedback. But yeah, we don't have that long to wait. Trust me. You think, an hour? That's when you're my age, an hour just flies by. You know, you got the skeletal fellow in the black cloak with the scythe going tick, tick. Anyway, so yeah, don't sweat it. It's not going to be that long, and then he'll be joining us, and we can scold him and everything else, and have a little fun at Ty's expense. But this is my thesis that I am entirely sure that Ty is going to shoot holes into. Briefly, the Open Gaming License, if you're not familiar with the Open Gaming License, it is an agreement that you can put in the back of a product that mimics the rule style of the D20 or Dungeons and Dragons rule system modified by Wizards of the Coast from the one that was created by TSR. And it allows you to publish your own unique adventures or even rule sets, so long as you do not use product identity. And you can come up with things that are similar to product identity. You cannot say Ithalid or Mind Flayer. You can go with, Squidhead Brain Attacker, and use everything in your power to make it like a Mind Flayer, but not actually have a Mind Flayer in your game, but still have Mind Flayers in your game. Passerby says, have my Kia's question ready for Ty. Good. Because that is a product identity matter. That's not an open item. See, I can't create a World of Greyhawk product and sell it without Wizards of the Coast say so, and they certainly wouldn't give me the say so to do it. But I'm going to take my studio cans off right now, just to spare my ears, because I don't know how long Ty will be on our live stream. Could be an hour, could be a couple, could be more, and just to spare my ears somewhat. Like it's Halfling, not Hobbit. Exactly. That's a case of the Tolkien estate not having enough pull to have Halfling removed. Now, you could say that that Halflings live in underground homes, that they have curly hair on their feet, that they're about this tall, that they enjoy good food and good drink and value that over treasure and gold, and basically describe everything the way Tolkien did, using different words to sum up a hobbit. Just never use the term hobbit or hobbiton or Middle Earth or the Lonely Mountain or Angband or Moria or Saruman or Sauron or Gandalf or Frodo. Or you get where I'm going with that. And you can have fun with it. The first legal snag, possibly, that TSR ever ran into was saying Hobbit and Balrog and Ent in Chainmail. Not in original D&D, in Chainmail. Are orcs still in the public domain? Yes, orcs are still in the public domain because they are. Orc is an old English word which means, at its root, bad person. Um, so, yes, orcs are and always have been public domain. So, so yes, orcs are in public domain. Now, I have over the years, based on a court case that occurred in, and I want to get this date right, so let's see. There was a 1993 court case where TSR sued a company that was making third-party products. The company was called Mayfair. And they said, hey, you guys are in violation of our IP. And part of the court settlement ended up that Mayfair got to publish products. Hello, James. Mayfair got to publish products that said AD&D on them for use with AD&D, and they got to use certain things the TSR permitted them to use. But part of the court decision in TSR versus Mayfair, in a nutshell, the judge established that you cannot copyright a role-playing game system. You can copyright the presentation of the system. I can't publish Dungeons and Dragons and say, here's Dungeons and Dragons. But I can publish Delvers and Demons, leave out any IP that belongs to Wizards of the Coast, and say, here's Delvers and Demons, and cite TSR versus Mayfair. I have always considered it highly suspect, for reasons that I'll get into when we start the live stream with Ty when he gets here. And James, if you're just joining us, Ty will be late. He will be here around 5 Eastern. But the 1993 decision says you can't copyright game rules. You can copyright the presentation, but the mechanism you cannot copyright. It would be like me inventing a poker game called Six Card Bill, and saying, okay, I'm copywriting this. Nobody else can play. Nobody else can publish poker rules now. Well, if Six Card Bill is just Six Card Stud, and all the kings are just pictures of me going, and I throw in a couple of extra rules, so what? You can still use generic face cards, or generic playing cards, and a normal king for a face card, and not infringe on my game. And I can sit there and never sell, card game, and you're selling millions. But Wizards of the Coast came forward and offered the so-called open gaming license and said, hey, if you want to publish anything you want that uses these core rules, it's fine. We're opening this forever. Just put this in the back of your book, or put this in the front of your book. Just acknowledge that you accept that this is the agreement we have with each other. My contention is that agreement is bullshit and it's unnecessary because of TSR versus Mayfair. Are there certain things that are in new D&D that you might want to use? Maybe. But that agreement is unnecessary because of TSR versus Mayfair. That agreement was always there, and it was always available to anyone. The stuff is already open, and it doesn't belong to anyone. If I want to publish a module in the old school style, and I'm in fact, this Ty not joining us straight away is going to give me a chance to create something, I think. So let me see if I can get this to come up here, because there's something. Yeah, so I've opened up one of my PDF copies of Steading of the Hill Giant Chief, and I want to read this to you guys. Let's see, I want to find something good that's got a lot of numbers in it. Okay, here we go. This is Encounter Area 19 in the upper steading from the Steading of the Hill Giant Chief. Servants' quarters. This large common room has various sizes of cots, tables, chairs, stools, and the like. It is cluttered with old clothing and junk. In it are 6 giantess maids, non-combatants, and a handsome giant warrior, 43 hit points, who will immediately do battle in order to show off for his admirers. He will not raise a cry for help unless brought to 50% or less of his hit point strength. On the round this happens, he will raise help by shouting with a 60% chance each round of being heard. This giant is the Dire Wolf Keeper, see Area 22, and he has a whip hanging beside the door to the east. The whip need only be shown to the wolves to make them cower and fall back. Nothing in that paragraph can mechanically be copyrighted. Nothing. If I want to publish a module, and almost every other area in the module is like that. Chamber of the Keeper. The Keeper is a ghastly hill giant, hunchback, twisted, and with but one good eye. He is thoroughly wicked and evil, strong, hit points 49, and remorseless. He is never without one of his 2 pet carnivorous apes, hit points 29, 26, and both are in his lair, one guarding the north of the door, the other on the platform built above it. The Keeper has a chain shirt which makes him armor class 3, and he fights with a battle axe +3 to hit, +3 to damage. His room has many skins on the floor, a bed, table, chair, 2 boxes, several crates and barrels, 1 chest, and odds and ends of armor, weapons, furniture, tableware, and so forth. None has any value. A loose stone in the floor hides his treasure. 5,400 gold pieces, 5,500 gold piece gems, 500 gold piece gems, 4 100 gold piece gems, and a large earthenware jug which holds 4 potions of water breathing. Once again, there is nothing in that paragraph. Nothing in that paragraph, I maintain, that is copyrightable or that is product identity. The way Gary wrote G1, not on purpose, not to make D&D open source, but the way Gary wrote G1, it is very sparse. It is not wordy. It does not say armor class this, number of attacks this, speed this, saving throws the other, so on and etc. that you see in modern day stat blocks. Monster name, hit points. Treasure, if applicable. That's it. That mode of presentation is open whether you use the OGL or not. Now, why am I railing about the OGL? Might you say, Bill, it's not, it's a page if you cram the font down small enough. It's, it doesn't have to be multiple pages, and it protects you from legal attacks from wizards. Well, first of all, I don't believe for a minute that Wizards has legal attacks that they could sick on you if you did that. If you published a module like that there would be any recourse for Wizards of the Coast to come after you. They just wouldn't have a legal leg to stand on. Again, CTSR versus Mayfair. And the other is a little bit more insidious, and I'll get into this in a moment. My fear is that by putting your name on a contract or putting a contract to your name, you are opening yourself up. You are basically saying, I'm doing this at the largesse of these people over here. I am acknowledging that they are creating a legal precedent to permit me to do what I want. Folks, I'll tell you something. I have never trusted a so-called open contract like that, and I never will. The GPL, the so-called open source. I mean, open source is a little bit more difficult, but when you're talking about something like this that you're like putting your name to and putting physical copies in the world, if they can giveth, they can taketh away. I'll tell you something. A buddy of mine was doing some IT work once for an attorney, and he handed the guy the standard contract, and the attorney just wrote his name on it and handed it back, didn't read it. And he laughed and said to the guy, hey, I thought you were an attorney. You didn't even read it before you signed it. And his response was, there's nothing in there I can't get out of. Now, whether he was being facetious or whatever, I don't know. But not being a law-talking guy, which is why we're going to have Ty on in a little bit, my fear is that someday, particularly with Hasbro behind it, now all the hippy-dippy good feelings and we're going to free D&D up, and we're going to make we're never going to have a situation where like TSR unleashed on people back in the late 80s and early 90s with them like trying to shut down people swapping homebrew modules and netbooks. But my fear is now that group is long gone. Ryan Dancy's gone. Peter Adkinson's gone. Monty Cook. All those guys are gone. That someday Wizards of the Coast Legal, a division of Hasbro Incorporated, could say it's time to pay the fiddler, get your shit off the shelves, or else it belongs to us. Oh, you don't agree with that? Funny, you put this contract in here, and these 25 lawyers have gone before a judge and said all these clauses, that 2 + 2 = 5. So, give over. It either belongs to us or we're sending you a C&D and it'll belong to nobody. Now, there's a lot of shit that's been done under the OGL that I could see Hasbro doing that with just to get it off the market. They don't want it. And they just... But That's my fear about the OGL. All right. A big legal contract that you sign your name to. And my name is on OGL stuff. Don't get me wrong. Lost Crypt, Osric, although Osric doesn't really impact me. And Elemental Moon. Oh gosh, what else? Temple of the Sun, the published version of Temple of the Sun SA1 from Hellebarde. I never put the OGL on my freely given away modules, even after it was out there. I never put it out there. So we're going to talk to Ty, and we're going to find out, do I need to loosen the foil? Is the foil on my head too tight? So he will be here to answer those questions. James says, I think the OGL is only needed if you're going to claim compatibility with other games like D&D or whatever. More for branding. That is the D20 system. If you want to claim D&D compatibility, if you want to use, if you want to use product identity, you had to use the D20 system. Now, to the best of my knowledge, and folks can feel free to sign in and correct me if they want, but to the best of my knowledge, the Wizards of the Coast is no longer offering or giving a D20 like you can't publish D20 products anymore. Like, they don't authorize that. You can OGL till you're blue in the face. It giveth and it taketh away. Passerby says, nah, man, corporations are evil, or I just play too much Cyberpunk. Yeah. But I mentioned Osric, and I do want to mention Osric to Ty, because there's some interesting aspects about this deal that kind of swirl around Osric also. And I'll go into those when Ty is able to join us. But the point that I'm driving at here is that Wizards of the Coast, they're not our benevolent overlords. And if the OGL hadn't happened back in 2000, it wouldn't happen today. There's no way Hasbro would sign off on this. And the proof positive is when 4th edition came out and people kept saying, I want to, what about creating our own third-party product stuff for 4th edition? Well, 4th edition was cancer, but there were still people that wanted to continue to publish stuff that was compatible on its face with the current version of D&D, then current version. And so Wizards of the Coast released this kind of milquetoast thing called the GSL, which was a lot less liberal. Pardon me. And I think that Wizards of the Coast at that point, the then Wizards of the Coast, because again, most of the powers that be were gone, realized that the horse was rapidly running out of the barn, and they tried to close the door before it got out, but it was too late. Now, regarding Osric, and I said my name is on Osric, The caveat that I always feel like I should emphasize about Osric is I never want to come across like I'm trying to claim credit for Osric, like, yeah, I was there, and Osric, like Brian Williams on NBC News, I was there when Osric was created, and I told Stuart Marshall, you should copy first edition AD&D and create an open source game out of it. That's, I know, people were working on Osric, and it needed a monster section, and I did sphinxes and spiders, or was it sphinxes and snakes? I can't remember. But they were just like, these haven't been done, and I was like, I'll do those. So if you have a copy of Osric, if that's how you play AD&D, or you just have a copy of Osric because you want to look at it, and you look down at the bottom, my name is in Osric, but it's because of those two things. So I am not responsible for the rules. I'm not trying to distance myself from Osric because I don't like it or something. I just don't want it to ever be perceived that I'm jumping up and taking credit for Osric. Like, I was one of the guys who helped you. I was in the room when Osric was born, let's just say that. But I wasn't one of its dads. I'm an uncle. I'm an uncle of Osric. Let me see. Ty is messaging me, and I just want to see that. Okay, and he'll be with us in half an hour. So Ty will be joining us in a half an hour at 5 o'clock. And so my concern then about the OGL is that as they giveth, so they can taketh away. And it worries me. It concerns me, and it should concern you. Because you don't have to use the OGL, and you don't, if you're creating things, you don't have to risk that. And you say, well, what about risking Wizards of the Coast coming in? Wizards of the Coast wouldn't have a legal leg to stand on because of TSR versus Mayfair. So Ty's going to come in, and he's probably going to shoot holes in this because I'm probably wrong. I'm not going to lie. But we're going to see what Ty has to say about this. Katie says, I'll be throwing boxes then, damn. Again, Katie, if you have questions, like if you have a question right now, put it in the stream. Put your questions in the live stream. If you can't be here for Ty, I will say this person had a question, that person had a question, and I will make sure that he addresses it and answers it. And if you come back and watch later, you're like, well, my question might be based on what he said. And you watch the stream or listen to the stream or whatever. I mean, it's to listen to. There's not much to see. There's just me and my geek stuff around my office. So, yeah, you can just come in and pop a question in the comments under the video. I'll see it. I get Facebook notification. Greetings, Imp of Sod. This is relevant to my interests. Well, I hope so. But that's my contention. You don't need to put the OGL on your stuff. You don't have to put the OGL on your stuff. And I don't think you should put the OGL on your stuff. And if Wizards of the Coast has anything to say about it, point them at TSR versus Mayfair and wish them a good day. If you're that scared, find an attorney friend. He'll draft a letter. He'll cite it for you legally. And fire it off, Bake them a cake, cook them a dinner, mow their lawn for them, and maybe they'll trade it for you pro bono. But there's not ta-ta for now, Katie. There's not an imperative to put the OGL on there. Now here's where I get more conspiracy minded, and I'm going to touch on this again when Ty gets on, but I want to, for our viewers who maybe were not around at the time or aware of this, the TSR in the late 80s through the end of their existence was a vicious, nasty, litigious company that would fight dirty and deny gamers their right to create and extend beyond the inside of their own heads. Like, I honestly think if TSR thought that they could stop people from photocopying their notes and giving them to their friends, they would have done that too. TSR of that historical period, when they opened one baleful eye and looked out on the electronic frontier, and I mean BBS rings, bulletin board systems. Like, you'd sit at your computer, you'd dial up some guy across town who had a dedicated line in his house hooked up to a computer with a few floppy drives, or maybe one whopping 2 or 5 megabyte hard drive. He would, you would go out like that. And there'd be BBS rings, like, if you like my bulletin board system, go use this bulletin board system. And some of the more sophisticated BBS rings had failovers, like, I'm trying to reach bulletin board A, they're busy, bulletin board B is a mirror of A, so it would just fail over and dial up. And if B is not available, go on to C. On down the line. And onto that, D&D players started publishing netbooks, new classes, new adventures, new monsters, new rules, and so on and etc. TSR freaked out over this. They had an absolute thrombosis, and there was the internet, FTP sites. You know, on a university, you'd get your maybe 1 megabyte of space, of storage space. And so they started firing off just like shotgun blasts of cease and desist orders from everybody from single independent bulletin board operators to bulletin board rings to FidoNet hubs to Usenet providers to universities and FTP sites to companies that had like Genie, CompuLink, or Genie, CompuServe, Quantum Link, Prodigy. They went hammer and tongs at these people and said, you're not going to do this. We're not going to permit you to do this. All this belongs to us. This is our IP. You are spreading our IP illegally. And every time one of these sites would pop up and get popular, somebody at TSR would hunt it down and see that it got shut down. Particularly universities, because they were soft targets. So Uh, so eventually, TSR decided to be nice. They said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to let you guys put your stuff on a computer network, our computer network. We have an FTP site on America Online. You may put your materials on our FTP site on America Online with the understanding that anything you've created, whether you put it up there or not, if we find it out there, we're going to take it and we're going to put it on our FTP site, belongs to us. And if we decide to take it and publish it and make money off of it, you get nothing. It belongs to us. But we'll permit you to have your creations on the internet. And if we decide to take it off of our FTP site because we don't want it, we don't like it, we don't think that the D&D community should have it or use it, you're not allowed to take it and put it anywhere else because, again, it belongs to us. Isn't that nice of us? Aren't we being swell to you guys? That was TSR's response. And that went on for a few years. Now, everybody knows, everybody kept trading netbooks. There's one of the first netbooks I ever saw was actually called Unearthed Arcania, or Arcania Unearthed, and it was just a bunch of homebrewed classes and spells and whatnot. But the interesting thing was, someone reached out to Gary Gygax and asked for his input on, I believe it was a half ogre that they had created, and so it kind of sort of had Gary's blessing on it, which I thought was real interesting. So that was what the environment was like. That's what it was. It was back in those days. You had to play by TSR's rules. There was no ifs nor ands nor buts. And I mean, how do you as a creative person who wants to share things with people, you're not going to sell it. I mean, back then you might have thought, hey, TSR versus Mayfair, I'm cool, I'm good, I'm going to write and publish my own stuff. The TSR would absolutely sue your ass. Like, you know, maybe in the end you were covered, like, oh yeah, you know, I got dragged through hell and back, but you know, it was legally okay for me to do that. But you had to hire an attorney, and you had to respond to legal threats and so on. So, you know, it wasn't a good scene for you the gamer. So this is how TSR treated their customers. A kind of an analog to how modern computer game companies treat their customers. Like, you are an enemy, you are a pirate, our base assumption is that you're going to try and steal from us, so we're going to put incredibly restrictive and potentially harmful to your computer digital rights management on your computer. I mean, the fact that Ubisoft and a bunch of other companies have never been hauled into court and ordered to pay damages to people for what they've done with rootkits and malware that they've put on people's PCs is just mind-blowing. Like, not even the EU, and the EU is notoriously hostile to software licenses. Maybe that chicken will come home to roost one day. But so that's how TSR was. And the OpenGL came along, and people the OpenGL, the Open Gaming License. OpenGL is a computer graphics thing. the open gaming license came along, and people said, "Yay, this is so much better." But I want you to listen to something. I want you to listen. And if you're a parent, you know what I'm talking about. Stop doing that or else. Hey, start doing this, and then... What's the difference between those two statements? The factual outcome is the same. One sounds very harsh, one sounds very nice. But the end result is the same. Now, granted, Wizards of the Coast never asked everybody to create a massive repository of all of their stuff. Or did they? That's where I come into contention with the OGL. Is there a legal tripwire in the OGL? Is there a I can get out of whatever's in there mechanism somewhere in the OGL? And don't say, well, Bill, it doesn't say that in there. Man, I have seen court cases. This is just as someone making an observation, I have seen court cases go down in flames because if was used instead of is, or they instead of them, or that instead of those. It all hinges on tiny, barely identifiable to the layperson variables. And this kind of approaches what I was saying about Osric, and Ty will be on in about 15 minutes, and maybe he can put my fears to rest once and for all, you know? Maybe Ty can come in and say, Bill, you knucklehead, what nonsense have you been telling these people and making them paranoid? And then we'll all have a good laugh. But just my contention is that there's something in there that just makes me itch in a place I can't scratch, right just below the shoulder blades. Episode says Black's Law Dictionary has many definitions of the word is. What was it a former president once said? That depends on what your definition of is. Paul said a few minutes ago, with the current climate in gaming, I wouldn't put it past WotC to try to use access to D&D to bring independent creators to heal. Law may be on your side, but it always costs money and the process is long. That's what I'm saying. Now, perhaps there are some diehards among you. Perhaps there are some people watching this in the future. Hello, future people. Greetings from the past. To the future from the past, from a dead man, greetings. Isn't that kind of creepy that one day I will be dead and somebody might watch this video on YouTube and be like, whoa. But anyway, I know from rumor, I shouldn't say I know from rumor, I know that when Osric was released, from a legal standpoint, Wizards of the Coast went, the legal term for what they did was called, they went fucking bananas. Wizards of the Coast freaked out when Osric was released and did everything they could to bring its creators to heel, saying, no, you're abusing the D20 system. Osric was not released under the D20 system. Osric was released under the open gaming license. The people at Wizards of the Coast didn't understand their own creation. But then, of course, that was a separate group from the people that created the open gaming license. So that, and the GSL, and the fact that I don't believe there's a 5th edition OGL. If there is, if somebody wants to correct me and such a thing exists, please just say so. That tells me that everything is not all sunshine and rainbows. Stop doing that, or else start doing this, and then are two heads on the same snake, and it's the same venom. I can dress up a legal demand to you in something that sounds like I'm giving you the world. And it's very Machiavellian. In The Prince, Machiavelli wrote about, and this, if you've ever seen, or if you've ever read, rather, Dune, it works out like this. You set up a kingdom or a province, and you establish, you give it a principality, so you put a prince in charge there, or a governor, or a commissar, or a mayor, whatever. And you tell him, squeeze these people, crush the life out of them, tax them until they bleed. And if they rebel, mercilessly crush that rebellion. And then you wait. Then you go visit the city, the province, the county, the kingdom, the principality. And you listen to the cries of the people with a look of shocked horror on your face. And you say, oh my God, what has happened? And you make a big show of getting rid of the person you put in power. And you tell them, I'm putting James the Just in charge. And all he has to do is make the slightest change, release the pressure by the slightest bit. And he is James the Good, James the Wise, James the Just, James the Kind. And you do away with the first fellow. Preferably do it with someone that you want dead anyway. But the outcome is the same. One snake, two heads. Do as I say or else. Do as I say and then. Do you see what I'm saying, guys? My opinion, my not that smart legal opinion, not legal opinion, I should say, because I'm not a lawyer. And I'm gonna put my boilerplate disclaimer when Ty gets on about that. Just making sure I don't have a join request from Ty and I'm missing it. He'll be on in about 10 minutes, folks. Is that the OGL is no better than TSR's FTP agreement. It's just worded a lot nicer. They're just being nice and kind about it. But it's not any different. Thank you, passerby. That is basically what that's how Baron Harkonnen got rid of Raban. He knew Raban was a monster and would never amount to much, so he put him in charge of Arrakis and said, I want you to squeeze Arrakis. And of course the whole planet began slipping through his fingers, so his plan was to have Raban killed and then put Fade in charge. Unfortunately, the Fremen kind of threw a monkey wrench in that plan, and the Emperor had Raban killed, and then called the Baron on the carpet and said, What's going on? What's going on, Vlad? Come on. Um, so that's my feelings on the OGL. Um, use it, don't use it, love it, hate it. I've always been suspicious of the OGL. Anytime legal stuff comes up, I will tell you for free, I will tell you absolutely flat out for free, I'm terrified, I am mortified of legal entanglements. It makes my blood run cold. Police officer gets behind me and hits his blue lights, a little bit of pee comes out. Somebody says, hey, I need you to talk to an attorney, and like I get a heart murmur until it's over and done with. Telling me that I can have the world if I just stick this little contract in the back of my adventure module makes me sweat. The imp says, however, if I recall correctly, if you're going to write OSRIC compatible stuff, then you have to use the OGL. No, I don't think I do, actually. I mean, if I'm going to say that this is OSRIC compatible, yeah, sure. I mean, that's you know. But if I'm, you know what? No, I stated that incorrectly. Yes, you are correct. If I'm going to say something is OSRIC compatible, then yes, I have to use the OGL, and I understand that. But OSRIC is not the only path to creating own Dungeons and Dragons stuff. Own open gaming materials. And I would expect Ty will be along in a few minutes to hopefully put my paranoid ramblings to rest or give them fuel. Now, he sent me, and I gotta see if I can open this. He sent me a quick and dirty rewrite of the OGL that he had done. He just said, what was it he said? And I'll look at his chat here. My fast and dirty rewrite, Ty's OGL version 0.01. And I'm going to see if I can open that. Can I open that? We'll see. See if it'll open. Let's click open. For some reason it was opening Chick-fil-A's website. Chick-fil-A. I'm not a man who misses much fast food. Okay. Okay, so this is actually fairly in-depth. I didn't know, like when I saw how small the file was, or how small my phone thought the file was, I was like, you know, is this like a humorous thing? But it's not. And unfortunately, like, I can't. Well, I suppose I can scroll around here. Do you guys want me to read this now, or do you want to wait till Ty gets here and he can listen to my insane ramblings, the mad ravings of a person who is not a lawyer? And that's something I wanna emphasize, that I've got to. I've got to emphasize this, and I need to get this over to you guys. I'm not an attorney. Nothing I say should be construed as anything other than the ravings of a person who has a nervous breakdown if he gets a traffic ticket. My words, however carefully considered they might be, or even agreed upon by an attorney who comes on the show cannot and must not be construed as legal advice. I don't give legal advice. All I can do is present opinions and facts. Get Ty's reaction to you reading his crazy meant legally. Great. Now I've got this image of Ty like popping on the chat in like a black ABBA with the crimson stained lips, and the little bottle. Bill, it is by will alone, set my mind in motion, is by the youth of Safu, thoughts acquire speed, lips acquire stain, stain becomes a warning, it is by will alone, I set my mind in motion. but I'm gonna try and open his document here. I can't. I'm having a Nick Rekieta boomer moment. You know what's funny is Nick Rekieta's like 15 years younger than me, and people scream like, "You're a boomer! You don't know computers!" on his live streams, and I'm like, holy shit! I'm glad I don't have that audience. I have a nervous fucking breakdown. And I'm an IT guy. I'm an IT guy. Like I would just like throw stuff at people if they made "okay boomer" jokes at me. Biter to beard. He's gonna get a kick out of that. Oh my gosh. He should be along any minute now. I'm keeping an eye on the Zoom chat, which I finally figured out how to do. I think the last time I had somebody on Zoom, I had to do this like insane shit where I was capturing the screen. That was not a technical problem that I was creating. That was a technical problem with Open Broadcast and Zoom. Ty Beard, admit. Now I'm going to put my headphones on. Hello, Ty. Good afternoon, sir.
Hey, Bill, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Oh, my God, it actually worked.
Woohoo!
Wow. My daughters have said they're going to put that on my tombstone as the quote they've heard most from me since they were little is, "Oh, my God, that actually worked."
Oh, my God, it actually worked.
Look at my camera kind of... there's only so much the camera can do.
I was making the joke that like Nick Rekieta, you go on his show very frequently, and people in his audience scream like, "You're boomering it up, you boomer!" And I'm like, he's 15 years younger than me. He's not even Gen X. He's barely not a millennial.
Yeah.
If I had that audience, I'd curl and die. I couldn't take that heat.
Yeah. That was the first time I was on his show. Somebody said boomer. I said, "I'm not a boomer. I'm Gen X."
Yes.
No, boomer is a term of art. It means. Yeah, man. I am sorry for being late, but it was sheer arrogance on my part. I actually said the words, "Okay, my day is pretty much done. I can get on to Bill's show in a couple hours, and life will be great."
Yep. There you go.
And when you're doing that, you're basically just saying to God, "What do you got?" I mean,
you screwed with a quantum field, and by observing the time you wanted to be here, you changed the time you were going to be here.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's actually a great analogy for it. That was a fascinating topic, actually.
I thought I need a keen legal mind. Because I am full of insanity.
Couldn't find any of those, but yeah, but I'm available. So.
I am full of insanity and conspiracy theories for you to punch for the next hour.
Well, your teaser to me was very interesting, and I don't necessarily have a rebuttal. I'm just curious to hear the rationale. I did text you. I messaged you. I guess you saw it. I rewrote the OGL.
I want to read it. Like, I don't have a good messenger like this.
I think you'll find it more readable. Now, I don't, all kidding aside, I do not intend that as a criticism of WotC's lawyers.
No.
But we can talk about it. it is not drafted for maximum legibility, although I have to say it's pretty good.
Well, my monitor here, like, it's like barely bigger than a decent like presentation laptop. So like I was trying to read it on my phone and trying to read it on the screen because I've got like my studio software open and the Zoom call open and my chat screens open for YouTube and Facebook, and I was like, yeah, this is not gonna. I'm not gonna be able to read this right this minute.
No, and it's not necessary. But I think if you did look at it, it might clear a few things up. And actually, so rewriting a legal document is a great way to really understand how a document reads and is put together. It's almost, I wouldn't say it's not. It's almost kind of one of my go-to techniques when I want to understand something quickly. Because what it forces me to do is actually read every sentence and not blow through it, because because when you're rewriting a document, my goal in that rewrite was to include everything legally relevant, everything legally that the other document did. It's basically the deal on that is it's very redundant, and I'll tell you exactly how that happens. You draft a clean, sharp agreement. You give it to the executives and they say, well, I don't see where you said da 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 da. Now, you can either start arguing with them about it and say, yeah, well, that's part of this other term that I used. That's a term of art in the law. Or you can go, okay, we'll put that in. And, 1,000 times I've taken the latter course because, a lot of times it's just not, you'll spend more time arguing with them than you would just put it in. And it theoretically doesn't hurt to be redundant. The problems arise whenever redundancies create ambiguities or contradictions, and that's so easy to do. I actually found a very minor one in this, as a matter of fact. But
yours or theirs?
Theirs.
Okay.
And and I don't want to blow it out. I do not want to blow it out of proportion. It's the odds of it ever actually being an issue are essentially non-existent. But I think, I want to make it crystal clear. I think it was a very well drafted document.
Okay.
And I fully believe that the criticisms I would have with it weren't due to the lawyers. They were due to management insisting that certain things be spelled out to the last dime. And again, redundancy, it's being written for non-lawyers to read. So maybe there's some value in repeating the same thing several times. I kind of wish they wouldn't have done it slightly different ways every time, because to a lawyer, that's like, oh my God, there must be some distinction between these two.
Right. Let me present my insane conspiracy thesis to you. And perhaps this is something that like you can sum up in your rewording or your reading of the OGL. And I was telling the crowd earlier before you got here, and then we can get to some of the questions that they have. Okay, so, but the first thing that I have to do, and I mentioned this earlier, but I want to do this in front of you, is I am not a lawyer.
Stop bragging.
Stop bragging. Nothing I say can or should be construed as any kind of legal advice. This is for entertainment purposes only.
And me neither. I am a lawyer, but I'm not your lawyer, and you are all the people watching this.
Right.
We're talking in very generalized terms.
We're having fun. We're having a good time. Okay, so do you know the history of how TSR used to treat independent third-party creators in the mid-'80s to the end of the company?
To some degree, I've read several of basically the standard works now. Appelklein's book and a couple others. It was not good.
No,
I think,
no,
right?
it was very bad. And when they discovered BBS rings and information services and people passing homemade adventures and homemade game supplements around, they freaked out. I mean, I think, now you can correct me, but I think the legal term for what they did was they went bananas.
I would say batshit crazy.
Batshit crazy.
Those are synonyms.
Okay. So they went fucking bananas and started firing off cease and desist orders from universities that gave internet access starting in the early 1990s. all the way down to single neckbeards like me sitting in their house with a dial-up bulletin board system. They started firing off cease and desist letters saying, this all belongs to TSR. You can't do this. And they softened their stance in the mid-1990s and said, all right, here's what we're going to do. You can put all of your netbooks, all of your products that you've created on our FTP site on America Online. When you do that, it belongs to us. If we want to publish books and supplements using your material, we can, because it belongs to us. Because
excuse me. Context. I got out of law school in the middle of 1996, took the bar exam and went straight to work. There was the 3 years of law school before that, I was unplugged from the hobby and just simply didn't have time to do much gaming.
Sure.
Though I did get the first draft of Fistful of Toes written. Not sure how that happened, but anyway. So yes, I remember coming in on the tail end of that because they were coming under a lot of fire because they just simply didn't seem to understand how to deal with websites.
Right.
I mean, and I got to admit, I've never fully embraced or understood the idea of intimidate and threaten your customers and they'll buy more stuff from you.
Lorraine Williams hated gamers.
She's never, that much is absolutely certain.
Yeah,
she wasn't a very good business person.
No.
In fact, she was awful. And I look, I say that as a business owner myself. I say that as someone that for 25 years has worked for a large number of self-made successful business people. And I grew up in a successful family business. So when I say she was a lousy business person, I come into this with a fair amount of actual expertise on that point.
Sure.
She in fact, I don't know that she realistically could have been much worse. She antagonized the fan base. She antagonized the creative people. She had an absolute insane hatred of Gary Gygax. I'm sure that she's got her side of that story because, one of the things about Gary is this beloved figure now. But Bill, when did you start doing role-playing games?
1980. Okay.
So you remember that Gary wasn't always so nice and grandfatherly.
No, he was not.
Gary would be fairly described as a prick.
The first year, let me tell you a story here, and I don't want to get too far off track.
Yeah.
The only reason
and the digressions begin.
Let the digressions begin. The only reason I'm bringing this up is because Ernie Gygax posted this on Facebook in public. This was not told to me in confidence. Anyone who wants to, if you don't have a Facebook account, but you want to read the first-hand account of this and go make a Facebook account just to do this, this is on Ernie Gygax's Facebook page. 1981, the first year I was a gamer. What I knew of Gary Gygax was his name was on Keep on the Borderlands, the only D&D book I owned for the first year I was a gamer. Little did I know that 75 miles away from my little suburb of Orlando, over in Tampa, hanging out were Gary Gygax and Ernest Gary Gygax Jr., his son.
Yeah.
Over a matter of cocaine, Gary and Ernie got into a fist fight in the back of a van that landed Gary in a wheelchair for a year.
Wow. I didn't know about that.
So, yeah, when I met Gary, he was very much gaming Santa Claus. He was not a perfect person, and I don't pretend.
No, and I want to be real clear. Look, everybody's got their flaws.
Yeah.
And not many people can handle immediate, overwhelming success with grace and dignity. It really, you're asking a lot out of somebody.
Yeah.
And when you add in the fact that gamers tend to be socially awkward, we all, that's just that comes with a hobby. You add in all the baggage that comes with being a nerd in 1975. Even in 1980 when you started, you just didn't walk around telling everybody you played Dungeons and Dragons if you.
You didn't
about anything.
The people in the basic computer class in middle school, and that was it.
And it's been as another digression. It's been awfully fun as an adult talking to people and finding out, oh my God, you gamed too, really?
Very much so.
I'm on the board of directors with a guy who's a former Marine officer and a Harvard Business School graduate with honors. Just, looks like $1 million. And I'm sitting there going, why did you play D&D? You could have gotten all the women you.
Yeah.
So but yeah, the reason I brought that up wasn't to slag Gary. It's to acknowledge that I'm sure Lorraine had her side of it, but I criticize her not morally. I criticize her as a business person, acting that way to the creator of a hobby that your customers love was stupid from a business perspective.
Her business.
And I have nothing but contempt for business owners that say, I'm going to do what my emotions and desires tell me to do, and I don't care about the effect on my business.
Yeah. Her business.
That to me, you have obligations to the other owners of your business. You have obligations to your employees and so forth. Now, I haven't always necessarily, done my best at that either, but she didn't even try. There was no, and so, it was, TSR. I think too that in a very perverted way, Gary was fortunate in one respect that she came along, because she was so much more obnoxious and horrible than he was. That his behavior the previous decade has largely kind of drifted in the mists of time. And I don't even know that Gary intended for people to take what he did and said the way they did, but they did. Like I said, I remember when we used to joke that TSR was they sue regularly.
Yes.
That's when Gary and the Blooms were running things.
Yeah.
It was not Lorraine.
Well,
Williams.
the Blooms were running things. Gary was trying to build a media empire.
Well, and they were complete business amateurs too, and not particularly good at it either.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's being good at business. Everybody thinks that they can be good at business, but I can tell you from personal experience and observation, it's a lot harder than it looks. I mean, it just is.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't trade my status as a business owner for the world, but I would not characterize it as easy.
Yeah.
So anyway, we went off on this trail.
Now that we
oh yes, you asked about if I remembered how TSR treated creative people.
Yes, that was how TSR treated creative people. When Wizards of the
Can't
Coast
lock those up there, Bill. Just sorry.
That's okay. When Wizards of the Coast came in, Wizards of the Coast said, "Hey, here's the new D&D." Now, they got a hold of TSR in the late 90s. It was a good couple of years before 3rd edition and the Open Gaming License Agreement came out. So you can.
And I do remember, I was involved in those days. I remember when all that happened.
There's a couple of years of TSR publications that the books have TSR codes. They have the TSR logo on them, but on the inside they say Wizards of the Coast. But they came in and they said, It's morning in Gay America, guys. We're a different company. Here's this thing called the Open Gaming License, and this is where my paranoia game theory kicks in, and that is, they said, here's the Open Gaming License. You guys can publish whatever you want. You can say strength, intelligence, wisdom, dexterity, constitution, charisma. You can have kobolds, orcs, giants, dragons, giant snakes, succubi, devils, demons, hit points, saving throws, yada yada yada. You can have it all, and you can publish it. And that is what this says. That is what the Open Gaming License says. Ty, as a parent, I think you understand that there is no difference except tonally between "you better do this or else" and "if you do this, I'll then."
Hmm?
But to me...
Was telling an attorney today, she angered a client by telling him he couldn't do something that he wanted. He was a business owner, and it's a family law matter. And she's like, he did not react well. And I said, suggestion, don't say you can't. say, we'll have to have the consent of the other side. And she says, isn't that the same thing? I said, no, it's not. It sounds just so much better. And she's like, oh, yeah, that's right. So, yes, totally agree with that, that proposition.
So here's the thing. They rolled out the open gaming license and said, hey, here you go, do what you want. Back in 1993, in the bad old days of TSR, they leveled a lawsuit against Mayfair. Because Mayfair was producing D&D products, but they weren't stepping on Greyhawk or Forgotten Realms or anything.
No, it was approved for use of, and it was actually really good stuff, too.
Right. Well, TSR got fed up with it, even though they were approving it, and finally said, look, you've violated our agreement, we're taking you to court, yada, yada. One of the outcomes, and I don't understand the legalese, I tried to do my homework, I promise, Professor. I tried to do my homework, and the reading was a little dense. But what I do know is that TSR versus Mayfair resulted in the judge ruling that you cannot copyright.
Did it go to trial? I thought they settled it.
Well, I'm just one of the things.
I'm just telling you what I thought. I don't actually remember.
But one of the outcomes was that the judge said you cannot copyright a role-playing game system. You can copyright the presentation of it, but you cannot copyright a role-playing system.
Oh, I see. Yeah, no, you're right. He was restating an already understood area of the law. Right. I'm sorry, I misunderstood what you were saying.
But armed with that, I posit that the creator, whether it's you, me, any of the people in the chat, we don't need the OGL. The OGL is redundant, and I'm going to go a step further, and this is where their paranoia kicks in. When I was saying, what's the difference between you better not do X or I'll Y, and you can do X and I'll do Y. Those are two heads on the same snake, Ty. I don't think the OGL is any less poisonous than TSR's policies, except in how it's worded. You don't flip your shit and scream in your kid's face. You smile and you lean down and you brush their hair out of their face and you say, please do this and we'll get ice cream afterwards. So the bad parent has left. The good parent is here. Their desires and the outcome for not following their desires are the same. I don't feel that the OGL is a necessary step, and my ultra paranoia is that somewhere in there, Ty, somewhere in the wording of that, there is a trap. There is a logic trap. There
is.
Where they can reach out and pull your stuff in.
No. That's not in there.
That's not it. Okay, all right.
That's not in there. There are some interesting little kinks, though, that I really, I read the thing when it came out and all that, but actually it was quite fun to prepare for this little get together because I actually broke it down and all that. Before I go to that, let me make a couple of observations.
Sure.
You can definitely make a credible case that this is a nefarious. And I'm being sarcastic. I mean, I really mean this, that this was nothing more than a cynical move.
And that's what I feel. That's
right. No, and it's not. It's. I want to be real clear. It's not implausible at all.
Okay.
But I think you can equally plausibly make the case that it really wasn't that way, or at least that's not how it was intended. Let me tell you what they did. Okay. I agree with you, by the way. I don't think you need the OGL to rewrite Dungeons and Dragons. You just can't call it Dungeons and Dragons.
Sure.
Right? You as long as you express it with different words and don't just copy their text, you're free to go. However, what the OGL does do is it creates what we call in the law a safe harbor. Okay? And the concept of a safe harbor is this. Okay, no matter what, if you comply with these things, you're good. Now, you may still be good based on the external facts and the details of what you do and yada, yada, yada. But here you've got certainty. And that's what I would say that the OGL did, is it gave certainty to people. And one thing I've learned in business as a business lawyer is one of your jobs as a business attorney is to reduce the uncertainty in a transaction.
Okay.
Because if you can't do that to a sufficient degree, the transaction isn't going to happen, or it's going to be a mess. I mean, that's really one of the key things that good lawyers do, is we reduce uncertainty. That's what the OGL does. However, it doesn't. It does not stand for the proposition that that's the only way you can do it. And you are giving up a very interesting concession that I didn't know about. And that is, you are agreeing, let me find it here. You may not state that your product is compatible with D&D. Let me find the exact. Now, anything I say that this thing says you can't do can be overridden by a specific agreement, right?
Right.
You can have, so you're granted a perpetual worldwide royalty-free non-exclusive license, yada, 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 yada. It's just looking at it. It's on page. Where the heck is it?
And there's something,
Yes.
while you're looking there.
I had it all marked up and then left the markup at my office.
No.
So,
But while you're looking for that, something I want to touch on is.
There it is. Found it.
Okay, go ahead. Go.
Okay. So it's in section 7 of the current version of the 5.1 of the OGL. You agree not to indicate compatibility or co-adaptability with any trademark or registered trademark. Well, a trademark is Dungeons and Dragons. A registered trademark is Dungeons and Dragons. Mm-hmm. One thing that does annoy me about this document is they use capitalized terms, and the general rule in legal drafting is a capitalized term is defined somewhere in the agreement. And so they use capitalized terms excessively and don't define them. Well, in the absence of a definition, you fall back to the plain English definition. So you're actually saying you're not going to say that anything is compatible with Dungeons and Dragons. Now, I believe that WotC created the D20 trademark and trade dress and everything as the alternative. You can't say it's compatible with Dungeons and Dragons. You can say that it's D20 compatible. And so I think they, and that was actually pretty clever. Whether, whatever their motives were, that was pretty clever, because, we have to be some way to indicate that you can use this with D&D for it to have any actual utility.
Right.
Well, if it's understood that D20 is D&D, perps on that. They did an okay job. I like that. That's a good thing. But that's really the only significant concession you're making outside the scope of just the stuff you'd normally expect. Like, you're going to attach a copyright notice. You're going to put a copy of this licensing agreement in your stuff. You're representing that you have the right to use. You're only going to use content you have the right to use, because they don't want to get sued by third parties.
Right.
I think that fear is exaggerated, but again, remember, more than lawyers were involved in this. Lawyers drew it up first. Executives had to approve it, and executives have all kinds of fears that really aren't a big deal legally, but it's just, it's just so much easier to give them their way and just put it in there, because you're not actually hurting anything as long as it doesn't, like I said, doesn't create ambiguity. So, and there's stuff in here that you wouldn't normally see in a licensing agreement. Like, you may not market or advertise the open game content using the name of any contributor unless you have written permission to do so from the contributor. That provision, is that even enforceable? Well, you're promising Wizards of the Coast that you won't do that, but Wizards of the Coast doesn't have any damages. I guess what that would do is give them the ability maybe to terminate the license. If you don't violate the terms of the agreement, they can't terminate it. It is perpetual and irrevocable. So you're not giving up. I don't think there's nothing in there that would give them the right to take your stuff.
Okay.
Nothing. That. I mean, unless I have just absolutely missed it big, I don't think I have. And certainly by now, there are other attorneys involved in gaming. Matt Finch, for example, was an attorney at Frog God and so forth. So I think now the question becomes, okay, smart guy, why we didn't need their permission? They gave us permission to do something that we didn't actually need their permission to do, right? I mean, that's what you're saying.
That's one of my contentions. Yeah,
you're right. You're absolutely right about that. But what they did do was they said, you can do this, and we're agreeing that we will never contest it inside as long as you agree with the document. And so that's back to my risk management thing. So that's why the open gaming license became a commercial hit.
Okay.
Because business owners, their goal is to never go to court.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And so let's hypothesize that at that time I was hired by a company and they said, Ty, we want to write a supplement for D&D, and can we do that? And I said, well, you're not going to say that this is approved by D&D. No. Can we say compatible with D&D? I'm going to have to check the case law on that. I think that's okay, but I'll have to check on that. But I mean, they're going to sue us for using hit points and classes. I would say, well, are you asking me, does copyright law allow you to do that, or are they going to sue you? Because those are very different questions. They're going to say, well, both. Okay, copyright law would allow you to do that because you can't copyright game mechanics. You can only copyright the specific way they're written. Will they sue you? This is freaking TSR. Of course they'll sue you. I mean, that's what I would say to a client. And even if it wasn't TSR, I wouldn't be able to say to the client, I wouldn't even be able to say you're extremely unlikely. Because, I mean, anybody can get sued for anything. Yeah. And I've always prided myself as a lawyer on helping my clients understand the probabilities as best we can quantify them. But I'd have to say, yes, you can be sued, and I think that the chance of that happening is non-trivial. Well, your typical business owner, particularly in a thinly capitalized, garage hobby business, they're just not, they're going to say, well, we're not going to do this. We're not going to run that risk. So now, in my mind, the interesting question is, did Wizards actually know that they were going to create this massive commercial engine called D20?
I can kind of answer that for you and say no.
I don't think they did either, by the way.
I'm gonna tell you something. This is from the people who had a real hand. Now, I stated this earlier. If you get Osric, if you want a copy of Osric to supplement your AD&D, or to be kind of a travel version of AD&D, so you don't have to take your rare books with you. My name is in Osric. My name is in Osric because I did the monster write-ups for giant spiders and the types of sphinxes. One of the authors said, we need volunteers on monsters, and I was like, ooh, I'll do that.
I pray for the soul of the author who decided not to put monks in Osric. I regularly pray,
I will told pass him that on to the design team.
You don't have to. I've talked to him.
Okay, all right. So I wrote. So my name is on Osric, but I am plenty arrogant about a lot of things, but I'm not so arrogant as to claim that I helped write Osric. That's me, And it's not because I don't like that fact. If
somebody had to write it.
Yeah, if the powers that be came up to me and said, "No, Bill, you had just as much input as these guys over here." So, oh, gee, thanks, man. It's very cool. But when Osric came out and was being distributed, Wizards wasn't happy. They were not happy.
I actually do know a fair amount of the backstory, which I'm not going to get into because I know it from someone who's a client.
Okay. Well, then you know this for the benefit of the folks in the chat and everything. Wizards,
no, that's a very good point.
Wizards.
Hello, Caesar. No, I'm done. Sorry. In fact,
But Wizards was unhappy, and they fought with the creators, and eventually they just crawled
and
away.
they should not have had a problem with it. If
They shouldn't have had a problem with it. Wizards ended up crawling away and just leaving it on the floor. But what is
because they were going to get their asses kicked by their own license.
Oh yeah.
I mean, be unhappy about it all you want to, but Osric was squarely in compliance. Yeah, I think probably some lawyers got unfairly blamed. Because here's the thing: if you actually intended to create a new business market, you would have put some kind of royalty provision in it. No one is that altruistic in business.
No, they're not.
They're not. I mean, it's completely acceptable, understood, and there's nothing sinister about it. If you're altruistic, you make the royalty very modest. But you would have put, if you sell this stuff, you owe us even something as simple as, look, if you sell this stuff and your volume is over $10,000 a year, you got to start paying us a percentage, and then rely on them to voluntarily do it. And if anything really takes off, then But there was none of that. And I'd never thought of that, Bill, but you're absolutely right, because I was aware of those facts. I was actually aware of the response, which was particularly artful from the author.
Yes. Yes.
I don't have his permission, so I'm going to talk about it. Just simply say it was.
Same.
He's a brilliant guy, and he's a very very sharp gamer too.
Yep.
And it was a beautiful, my response would have been far more active.
Yeah, what you have allowed out into the public forum of your responses, I have no doubt that it would have been tart,
but probably no more, but probably not as effective as his. Truth be known, certainly no more effective. Say it that way.
Right.
But no, you're absolutely right. That there is the smoking gun right there. Of course, they didn't know they were going to do this. But the problem was they had granted a perpetual, non-revocable license. Let me tell everybody what actually the OGL gives you.
Great. Let's hear that.
Mainly, and again, I am a lawyer. I'm not your lawyer. If you want to pay me to advise you, I will. But this is not legal advice. This is just.
I give you 10,000 internet dollars right now.
Yes. Well, it's got to be. That's an interesting thing. We lawyers do have to be careful about this, because it isn't actually required that someone pay you for them to become your client against your will. So like, I know that normal people go, would lawyers stop saying that? Good grief. We really kind of do have to keep saying that. Anyway, what you are essentially given, let me see, where are my notes? Sorry, it's been a long day. What you get, this is my notes. You get a non-exclusive perpetual right to use open game content. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What is open game content? What you and then what you also are saying, you're agreeing that you may not use anything called product identity.
Right. No beholders, no Greyhawk.
Right. We'll get into that. Open game content is a defined term. Of course, this is one of those lawyer things that drives me crazy. It was specified. It's anything specified as open game content. In other words, anything that we say on the front is open game content is open game content. Mm-hmm. Okay. They could have made that slightly clearer than it was, but that's fine. That's what they meant. And that's how it would be interpreted by a court. Including, and at this particular time, the only specific thing is the system reference document 5.1. And there's, that. So you're getting, you get to use anything in the system reference document, okay? But a little bit of a circular kind of, this is one of those kind of ticky-tack things that bother me, and I don't think it's necessarily a big problem, but something in the system resource document, if something got put in the system resource document that was also identified as product identity elsewhere, it's unclear whether or not you can use that or not. I think Wizards is going to say you can't. I'm not sure they could prevail, but that's an ambiguity. As long as they're very careful about what they put in the things they mark as open game content, then no problem. Okay, so what is product identity? Product identity is anything not defined as open game content. Plus, that laundry list of specific things listed, the names of that extended definition, Forgotten Realms, Wizards of the Coast, D20 when used as a trademark, Faerun, blah, 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 all of those specific things, that's product identity. And so my contention is that if that winds up, any of that stuff intentionally or otherwise winds up in the system resource document, it's off limits, even though the system resource document is itself identified as open, content. So open game content. And this is based on not a reading, but not lawyer thorough reading. So there may be the ambiguity. I may have missed. I don't think I did, but I may have missed something. All right. So back to the definition. All specific items listed in that list, anything identified as product identity. Here's where it gets interesting. Product names, logos, trade dress, etc. Okay. Product stories, storylines, plots, thematic elements, dialogue. Some of those things are not necessarily protected under copyright law. To your point, we're giving up some things.
Okay.
Right? I don't think it's a big deal in the gaming context. Okay. And as a matter of basic practicality, let's say that Wizards of the Coast sues somebody, some individual, for violating the open gaming license. Mm-hmm. And it's on some fairly ambiguous ticky-tack, what unclear point. I think that the open gaming license will be interpreted against Wizards of the Coast because they wrote it. Contracts and agreements routinely will say things like, this thing will not be interpreted for or against either side. I don't recall seeing that in here, but even if it's in here, they're distributing it to lay people. And nowhere in here does it really say, hey, you ought to run this by a lawyer. So I think that ambiguities as a practical matter in court would be resolved against Wizards of the Coast. Unfortunately, you'd have to go to court to do that against more lawyers than God if they chose to do it. Yeah. So and any other trademark or registered trademark that is clearly identified as product identity by the owner of the product identity. Okay, again, that's one of those, of course, going to look at that language and go, okay, we know what they meant. It's not
legal documents talking in circles.
Well, yeah, and again, like I said, I do not want to disparage Wizards lawyers because I think they did a good job.
Sure.
And I know exactly. I guarantee you, these ambiguities are in there because executives basically pulled rank and said we wanted it in there, and lawyers work for them, so okay, So my comments, well drafted. That's the first thing I put in my notes. This is not limited to a specific use. Once you agree, you're stuck forever in theory, question mark, is that bullshit? Okay, sorry. Read my own notes to myself.
That's fine.
It actually says, is that a bullshit criticism?
We were kidding earlier just before you came on, and Paul in the chat said, get Ty's reaction to you reading his crazy Mentat legalese.
Yeah.
How cool would it be if Ty showed up in like a black robe with a red stained lips?
It is by the juice that
It is by Will.
Which actually is all that stuff, by the way, is in the Lynch movie, but not in the book. But
yeah,
Hey,
I maintain that the Lynch movie was a fine interpretation of the book.
I have the most conflicted view of that movie possible. There were parts of it that were truly brilliant. You could not have captured the look of Dune, other than the shoebox spaceships. But I mean, the costumes, the sets, exactly like I imagined Dune would look. The casting was excellent. Could have done without the heart plugs and the cat milking, though.
The cat milking and the heart plug, this
is
like
I could have done without
David
that.
Lynch being David
And what's
Lynch.
Frightening is apparently Lynch geared a lot of the crap he wanted to put in there down when Herbert was like, David, I like the money and all, but
yeah.
So anyway, but yeah, so yeah, Minta, would be pretty funny. So my notes are the only thing granted is whatever's in the SRD, but the SRD trumps product identity definition, I think. The OGL itself is not open game content. That's an interesting little minor trivial legal point. But you're not only given permission to distribute it, you're told to distribute it.
Yeah, exactly.
So I was kind of, no tiebreaker if you fail to clearly designate open game content. Yeah, there's a whole elaborate thing that you're supposed to, when you produce an open game content thing, you're supposed to affirmatively state in there what is open game content. No guidance whatsoever on how explicit that needs to be or how sufficient it has to be, and no real penalties either for not doing that. Look, if you're going to use this thing, you should try your best in good faith to comply with it. But we're back to that thing of breaches. To terminate a contract, a breach is required generally by the law to be material. It has to be a significant breach. That ain't a significant breach in my estimation. A lot of this stuff really wasn't so much legal stuff, it's behavior, good neighbor kind of stuff. Don't use somebody else's content unless you got permission. Don't, go tell everybody what's open game content and what's not. Well, that's sensible, right? So there's no ambiguity because the thing is, when you create an open gaming license thing, if something isn't open gaming content, you probably should specify that, right? I mean, because it would be reasonable, especially in 2002, for people to say, well, if it's open game content, I can use whatever's in there. And that was, so, let's see what else. Circular, open content excludes product identity excludes open content. Again, a lot of these are the most trivial and quibbling of complaints. Under normal circumstances, a client would never hear that kind of stuff from me. That's for my own internal, note. And if I had if I'd spent more time in preparing for this and didn't have the day I had, I would have refined that analysis a bit. But anyway, back to your original hypothesis, though, they're giving us permission that we don't need. That is true. That is absolutely true. However, they are giving a safe harbor so that you don't have to prove that in court. Because unfortunately, the copyright law, well, let me back up. I give this speech to clients all the time, right?
Right.
You can have a perfectly predictable legal system, or you can have a just and fair legal system, but you can't have both. Because a perfectly predictable legal system would be a one-size-fits-all thing that would not take into account special circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
A perfectly fair legal system would take every single case completely and totally on its own merits without reference to anything else. And so you'd never be able to predict it. Say nothing about the ability of human beings to actually operate it. So I believe strongly that the law is always in tension between predictability and fairness, or reasonableness in the case of business law or whatever, right? So a safe harbor gives you that certainty, and that is important to business.
Okay. Very
important. I don't get very far with a client when a client says, I want to do this, am I going to get sued? And I say, yeah, but we'll whip their ass. The money's got to be pretty good for the client to go, well, okay then. Let's go do that.
Right.
I mean, I won't say that's never happened, but you get my point. You're talking about niche businesses for the most part, very thinly capitalized private little businesses, that kind of thing. So I think it's possible to square what they did with a relatively altruistic interpretation. But yeah, there's always a part of me, much like you, I think, that just bows up when someone says, okay, I'll allow you to do that.
Yeah.
Let's stop right there.
And
You'll allow me.
I was explaining this to the chat, and this is like all kidding and all your jokes aside. This is not a reflection on you. I have many friends who are attorneys, and
You poor bastard! I feel so bad for you.
But
you should get out more.
I think you and I are pretty simpatico. We get along pretty well. But so I don't level this at you, but I have, and the funny story between you. You still hear me? Okay.
I'm hearing you fine.
All right, that's fine.
A little bit of video stutter, but not too bad.
OBS threw up on itself for a quick second, but I am mortally terrified of the law with a capital L.
Right.
I get pulled over
you should be.
I get pulled over for a ticket, and I have a fucking panic attack.
Yeah.
Somebody says, I have this legal form for you to sign, and it's like Van Helsing with a cross against...
now, that's not the worst instinct in the world to have, though.
I just...
1 second.
That sort of thing. So, waving a contract in front of me that says, if you just sign this and agree to put it in your product,
it'll be okay.
You can publish
Step over.
We won't take your stuff.
Oh, I just thought of something. Oh my goodness. What about a modern day chick tract?
I know just where you're going.
using the OGL as the gateway.
Yes, in my mind's eye immediately, like the little...
Okay, we probably just don't get out enough.
Rotund devils he would draw holding contracts out to people to sign, yes. So and you've largely answered this with the safe harbor comment and the observation that no, Bill, it can't be taken away from you. No one's going to sneak into your house at night and steal your computer with your D&D.
No, but that is a surprisingly, jump aside real quick, that is a surprisingly common misconception. Even from people with legal training sometimes. It's like, well, we're fighting over this. If we win, do I get it? Almost never. The law, with the exceptions for unique things like a particular piece of property, if you're damaged, your compensation is in money. It's not in specific things. Now, if you're fighting over who actually owns something, sure. But no, it's a very common misconception that specific things can be taken from you. And the general rule is no, unless you're actually fighting over legal ownership, or unless an extended process has, you've gotten a judgment, you've had it properly recorded, you've abstracted, the sheriff has come out, it's not exempt, and blah, 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 blah. But I mean, but no, there's no like, you breach this, we get your stuff. No, that's not in there that I saw.
So my shield against all this was for the longest time, and I'm getting to where I can almost get to where I can kind of ease it down a little bit with what you've been saying. Not set it aside completely, but is what I call the G1 hypothesis. And it is, when Gary wrote G1, it's very sparsely written. Not because he wanted to write something that would allow an exploitation of TSR legal and people to publish their own stuff. But I'm just going to read a brief encounter from G1 Studying of the Hill Giant Chief to you. Let me see if I can find the one that I was on. Because I want to find something that's got some monsters in it. So just to kind of exemplify what I'm talking about here. Okay. All right. So. Oh gosh. All right, here we are. Ogre headquarters. The Hill Giants employ ogres for scouts, messengers, servants, and the like. For the ogres are trusty flunkies as well as hard workers and fighters, in addition to those in the Great Hall and the young at work in the kitchen area. There are 5 of them here. Hit points: 26, 23, 18, 16, 15, playing at knucklebones and drinking small beer. Amidst the heaps of skins on which they sleep is hidden a leather sack containing a potion of storm giant strength and a delusion. Locked in a great iron chest with a key held is this much treasure, and so on and etc. There's nothing in there that says armor class or Greyhawk or it literally just says, here's how many monsters, here's their hit points, here's their treasure. I maintain that you could write a 2-foot high stack of modules formatted just like that,
Yeah.
and never draw a single sideways glance from Wizards of the Coast. Sell them for $5 a pop at Gen Con. No OGL inside, no acknowledgement of the OGL, but you're also not going to be dumb and say, hey, this is compatible with D&D in print on the cover or in the text. But that kind of formatting is also a safe harbor. True or false, Counselor?
False.
False, okay.
Because you, and again, you're not a lawyer, right? So
I'm not.
you don't follow our weird, twisted, thought process. Do you remember when I said to the client, are you asking me if you can do this legally or if they'll sue you? Because those are two very different questions.
And this falls on that line of, is it
you
legal
just asked
or
that same question.
Is it litigious-able?
Anybody theoretically can sue anybody for anything.
Fair.
And the problem is, if you ask me, is it likely they would do that? I don't think so. They haven't shown a particular propensity to litigation. But that's not the same as saying no.
Right.
If this thing became, and look, I'm no slight on Wizards or anybody else, but the use of lawyers to beat a concession out of somebody by spurious litigation is lawfare. That's what we call it. So, but legally, I agree completely. If you were able to fight that battle to the finish, I would think very highly of your chances of prevailing. One of the things that, for anybody watching, you can never give a client 100% certainty on the outcome of litigation because there are too many other factors that you, the lawyer, have absolutely no control over. Mm-hmm. The judge could be having a bad day. Somebody in the jury might not like your tie. Somebody on the jury might think you look like their ex who they hate. Somebody might mishear it. So there's, and I don't care how strong your case is, there's a certain percentage chance of losing just because, you can't control for all those factors. I think even in the strongest cases, that chance is at least 1 in 10, maybe 1 in 5.
And I'm enough of a gamer to know how often that one that's never going to come up will come up on a D10.
Well, that's right. You're enough of a gamer to know that, 1 in 10 is a very low probability. Would you risk your life on that?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, the reward would have to be pretty darn high. Well, okay, would you risk your financial well-being and that of your family? I don't know, the stack of modules 2 feet high.
Yeah.
You see, that's the deal. So, yeah, I think that, but very definitely I have that same sort of, wait a minute, what do you mean you're going to let me do this?
and you've assuaged a lot of, quite frankly, paranoia on my part.
Yeah, well, Bill, I've grown up in business. I work only for business owners who are self-made almost exclusively. I'm a business owner myself, and I've been doing it 25 years. Mm-hmm. It would be really bad if I didn't have some perspectives that normal people don't have, right?
Sure.
It's not. You don't spend all day thinking of these things, but of course I do this every day because my job, as I said, a big part of my job is risk reduction.
Right. Right.
By the way, there's an interesting little. This is a digression, but I think it might be fun. You always hear people talk about the good old boy system, right? I assume y'all have some version of those words. Yeah. It's not what you know, it's who you know.
It's who you know.
Usually followed by the crossing of the arms and the stern sourpuss face of disapproval, and like there's something wrong with that.
Ty, I'm a fan of SEC football. That is the good old boys network.
Well, so I was telling a politician I know. We were talking. I don't remember how it came up, and I said I'm actually fine with the old boy network for the most part, and think it's actually efficient. Dude, what? And I was not born of wealthy parents. I paid my way through law school by working in student loans. So I'm my parents were very successful, but then they got divorced and blew it all fighting in the divorce. So, you know. Anyway, I said, no, hear me out. I said, let's say that I'm going to hire somebody for an important position, okay? And this right here is the population of all the things I don't know about that person, okay? Mm-hmm. Well, that's a lot of uncertainty. Now, I can call the person in, I can interview them, I can check them out, I can expend a fair amount of effort to reduce that box a little bit. But even when I do all that, that's still a pretty big box. But along comes somebody whose opinion I have grown to trust through experience or whatever, for whatever reason. I trust them. I think they have good instincts, and they say that guy is a good guy and he'll be a great fit. All of a sudden, the population of what I don't know about that person shrunk dramatically. And since I can't afford to spend an endless amount of effort reducing that box otherwise, I go, okay, and I hire him. Now, someone else who is equally qualified competing for the position, or for that matter, even more qualified, says, wait a minute, that's not fair. Well, no, it's not, but that's not my problem. But it's also, you got to understand something. I'm not in this to give you a job. I'm in this to get an employee for a position. And so if I can have a lot of confidence that he can do the job, then I don't have to run the risk that I take by hiring you just hoping that you'll work out, right? And so that's that, so we got here somehow. I don't know.
Talking about risk management, I think. So, but,
yeah. And so that's what I'm saying. So, right. So business owners, business owners live in a world of risk every day, and they're not terrified of it. In fact, they're the most risk-tolerant people you'll ever find. But they absolutely reduce risk where they can when it's feasible to do so, and when the effort expended is justified. And that's where useful lawyers come in, because that's one of our big deals. So, and you said, to the extent that I've given you some comfort, right? I've reduced your uncertainty about this agreement.
You have.
Saying, no, it's not in there. I didn't see it. It's possible I would overlook something that elemental, but I doubt it, because it's only 2 pages. by lawyer standards, this is a very short agreement.
Well, I figured, like Matt's position might be a little biased. Not bad, I'm just saying biased.
Sure.
Nick would have spent most of the chat screaming at his computer and reading things that people who paid him $200 said. So
who can blame him for that? By the way, I'm going to be on his show tonight. I'm having a day of live streams.
Excellent. I'm glad I got you first.
That's right. So he's had other lawyers on his show, so
Yeah, and I
fair.
Like I said, man, I haven't talked to Ty in the longest time. What can I talk to him about?
Yeah,
I keep having panic attacks about the OGL, so I'll have him on.
Funny thing was, when you sent me the message about that, I had been thinking several times the previous week, what are Bill's up to? That was a lot of fun. So I mean, just
dude, I love having you on the show.
I found him in the real world, and I've got I can't tell you how many times I'll think, oh crap, I told them I'd have that to them. I better get on that. And I go into the office and they called. And that's the only time they ever called. And what I think it is I think the brains just kind of work about the same, and it all percolates up at the same time.
So I do have some questions in the chat though for you. If you've got the time.
I do.
So let's see. Just a passerby asks, he had a question. So there's a heavy metal band called Kyuss, Kyuss.
Kyuss.
And they take their name directly from the AD&D monster from the Fiend Folio called the Sons of Kyuss, who are these undead lords that will rot you if they touch you, blah, 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 etc. So his question, and I think I understand the answer for this, but I'm going to let you field this. How does the band get to call themselves something that belongs to someone else like that?
Well, you get their permission. I mean, that's always the easy way to go about it. Even if you don't technically need their permission, you avoid risk. That's a sufficiently specific and detailed question. You're probably going to want to hire, if it's that important, you're going to want to get some actual legal advice on that, because off the top of my head, is that term actually, does that monster exist in mythology somewhere? Or is it a genuine from the whole cloth? By that name, I mean, so the thing that you got to remember about intellectual property, and I'm grossly simplifying, and probably real IP lawyers are hearing fingernails on the chalkboard here. There's trademark and there's copyright, and those are completely different. And the simplest way to describe it, copyright is what you have in something you create, like a song, a written book, whatever. George Lucas has a copyright on the movie Star Wars, and to an extent on the characters of Luke Skywalker and Princess Leia and that kind of thing. Okay, a trademark, on the other hand, is a particular name or logo, and word mark and symbol mark. You can trade. So George Lucas probably trademarked both the name Star Wars, the words Star Wars, although I wonder how trademarkable that actually was. Anyway, there's all kinds of esoteric rules about trying to trademark common words. Well, Star and Wars are pretty darn common words, but anyway. But the logo, the actual representation of the star, with the S and the T blended together, all that's copyrighted. I mean, that's trademarked separately. So, first question would be, is that name trademarked? So open the Fiend folio and take a look. I mean, if it's trademarked, they should have designated as such, because that was way back in the a long time ago when
I think Fiend folio was 81.
Yeah. So if TSR claimed a copyright on that name, or said in here all monster names are trademarked, fine. Then you got an issue. But that's really going to be something that you're going to want to get some specific legal advice on, because it, depending on what's in the Fiend folio and the background of that name. I mean, for example, I could call a band Goblin. I could call a band Orc, even, because Orc is a word that appears in German, and et cetera. You remember when TSR got in all the trouble about trademarking Nazi?
Yes. Okay. So the story behind that, I had it explained to me.
Yeah, it's not as bad as it sounds.
It's not as bad as it sounds, because. So for those of you who don't know, there was a brief period when TSR published an Indiana Jones role-playing game.
I finally completed my Indiana Jones role-playing game collection.
Nice.
By the way, I've been going around buying just player copies of everything that I didn't buy or lost.
Excellent.
So that's one of them.
So they, of course, went to Paramount and said, can we release a pen and paper role-playing game? And understand, back in the 80s, with one or two big IP exceptions, companies just didn't give a shit about role-playing games.
No.
A what game? A role-playing what?
No, I imagine that the people would weep tears of great agony if they knew how modest those licenses costs probably really were.
Oh yeah. I mean, a lot of them you could do on a handshake deal almost. But Paramount sent a stack of stuff and said, yes, all this is trademarked. And TSR, being a machine largely operated by lawyers, said, okay, well, we'll make sure. And when they printed up color counters for the game, German soldiers had Nazi TM.
Yeah. And that's back to that thing of, here's the thing, that didn't actually hurt anybody from their perspective.
Right.
Paramount said everything's trademarked. The lawyers are, or for that matter, actually the lawyers probably wouldn't have made that mistake. But again, Lawyers don't call the shots, the executives do.
Right.
I can easily see an executive going, oh my God, we got this license. Well, do we trademark it? Trademark every damn title in here and say it's their trademark. Well, but some of these things are, I don't care. I mean, I could easily see.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's not an unreasonable thing, right? But this is a valuable license. Better safe than sorry. And if somebody feels strongly enough about it.
Yeah.
No. But what I think is fascinating though, and so telling of the reputation of TSR among the people, among its customer base, is that we thought it completely plausible that they would seriously attempt to trademark the word Nazi.
Yep.
Not one person I knew went, there's no way TSR.
Yeah, no, that's got to be a legal issue. No, we said, holy shit, TSR.
Sounds like TSR.
Yep, that sounds just like TSR.
Sounds just like. Well, you remember? I think it was a Games Workshop attempted to trademark Space Marine and got their ears pinned back.
Yeah,
tried to.
That Games Workshop is elevated to heights of assholery that, in her most fervent dreams, Lorraine Williams could not imagine.
No, they have industrialized that. I mean, Lorraine was a talented amateur.
Yeah,
they are pros. What I think's funny is I assume that Fantasy Games Unlimited had a trademark on a game product in about 1980 by Mark Ratner, I think is his name, called Space Marine. Mm-hmm. And FGU has had an interesting intellectual property history of keeping stuff in print technically, thereby keeping their trademarks active and so forth.
Yep.
Mr. Bizarre, if you ever want me to look at that, give me a call. Because if you had a valid trademark in 1980, you might still have that thing trademarked now. And wouldn't that be fun?
I've actually owned a Space Marine like twice.
Yeah. That was a pretty good little system he had, as I recall. It was a science fiction miniature game built off of the kind of their default setting for the game, role-playing game Space Opera.
Yes.
It was,
yes.
For a 1980s miniatures rule set, it was pretty good.
Absolutely beautiful cover art by Jeff D. too.
Yeah, did he do all this? He do all the Space Opera.
Jeff D. did the cover, and David Sutherland, who also did so many beautiful pieces for TSR, including this one. David Sutherland did the sparse but effective interior illustrations of ships and weapons and unit notations and so on.
Cool.
So they both did some work for that.
Yeah, I don't think the term Space Marine is actually trademarkable.
Not considering the
let me rephrase that. I think it unlikely that it's actually trademarkable, just because that term has been around, that's
the term and the concept. E. Doc Smith wrote about Space Marines in 1938.
Yeah, and you can argue that is a well-known trope in science fiction. And, but Games Workshop had the bigger lawyers or the bigger lawyer bucks. Yeah.
But they moved now to easily trademarkable stuff like Tau.
Right. That's why they've renamed everything.
Yeah, Tau is a symbol in chemistry and the Greek alphabet and physics and everything else. So what did they do? Moved the T over, dropped a parens in, or a single quote in. So now it's Tau. And orcs are no longer orcs; they're uruks and so on. And
and what's funny is some of those accommodations may not be as strong as they hope. Like the term, like uruk, for example. My guess is that is a word meaning monster in some other language.
Yeah. Because
Tolkien was a linguist of world class.
Yes, he was.
And but on the other hand, it might be better than orcs from a defensible standpoint. But yeah, well, I have a real distaste for people who try to claim intellectual property ownership of things that everybody's familiar with.
Yeah.
That pisses me off at a molecular level.
Well, I've mentioned this before. The design of the Tau, the Fire Warriors' infantry armor, Not the big crisis suits, which are, let's face it, draw so much inspiration from Gundam that you could drop one.
Oh yeah. You
could drop one into a Gundam episode, and it would just like, oh, okay, that's a new Gundam type. But the Tau Fire Warrior body armor suits, dude, they come straight off of the Asia Astra album cover, and the Roger Dean was the artist on that, and he also did.
Oh my God, you're right.
He also did the cover art. This is a little more obscure. He did the cover art for a game called Bradicus. That was a.
Oh my God, there it is. You're absolutely right.
Yep. Look at that and tell me that's not Tau Fire Warrior armor.
Yeah, that's a little.
Yeah.
Now, so what's interesting is, does that mean it's not copyrightable? No, not necessarily. But what it does mean is that whoever owns the copyright to the Asia album might have a claim for infringement against Games Workshop.
Yeah.
That's a distinction. That's a distinction that does need to be made here, right?
Yeah.
Is that just because somebody else had that copyright or trademark doesn't mean you get to just go wild with it.
Yeah, don't fall into the trap of thinking that Games Workshop stole it from Arista Records, therefore we
can steal it from Games Workshop. Because actually Arista Records could theoretically come after you too. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Well.
Now with games, what does get interesting is but can Games Workshop come after them? I think you could. I think you. We'll get real copyright legal counsel in on something like this, but my off the cuff instinct is, boy, that is close. I liked the Tau vehicles and bought a bunch of them just because I was going to use them for sci-fi, just generic sci-fi at some point in my life. But I don't play 40K, although I like the models.
Same. I've got a bunch of Tau.
I actually wrote a set of miniature rules. I think I've got it on the Fistful of Toes 3 website, called A Fistful of Bolters, because I could,
Nice.
You've got these gorgeous models, and gamers want to put every single one of them on the table. So what do? You write a set of rules that makes that just the most excruciating, painful process on earth. I wrote a set of rules that you could run gigantic armies, and it still had plenty of texture.
Nice.
We played it a number of times at our local Games Workshop type hobby store, and they were like, "Oh my God, this is great." Okay, well, I'll enjoy it, but no, I can't tolerate 40K.
Yeah.
When they got rid of Overwatch, that broke the game for me, because basic infantry tactics are built around the concept of Overwatch, and if you take that out, now you're just playing a game. It doesn't have any kind of In second edition 40K, you could implement real world infantry tactics with those armies, and they were effective. In fact, a buddy of mine and I taught that lesson really, really hard to some 40K gamers back in the day. And I was never so proud when really the best of the bunch, he was a great guy, turned to be a great guy. He took our tactics and then just started cutting a swath through the rest and refined them, and but yeah, so I can't. But that's interesting. So yeah.
Yep. That's Roger Dean.
At the very least, Games Workshop, don't get carried away with your moral high ground on these things.
Yeah. So let me see here. Paul Beckleda says, wasn't Uruk the capital of Sumeria of old? Better lawyer up, Games Workshop. Gilgamesh is coming for you.
I think it probably would have. Now, the interesting question is, and I would defer, I have people that if I needed this answer, and that I would pay to answer this question. So the question is, can you actually trademark the name of a city? Don't think you can.
I don't know.
Now, I don't believe, again, this isn't legal advice. This is just Ty talking off top.
I mean,
don't think you can do that. I think you could include that in something else that you trademarked, but the trademark itself, the registered trademark would say, that it excludes those elements that are not. When you apply for the trademark, I've done that. When you apply for a trademark and you use elements that are individually not trademarkable, they will not issue the trademark unless you amend the application to say we're not making a claim on those things. You know,
Okay.
you know, so yeah, that gets into a thing. But yeah, that's funny. So yeah, once again, games. Well, here's the thing: you got to come up with a way to say orc without spelling it in any of the classic ways. You know.
Good luck, GW.
Yeah, lots of luck with that.
And yet, as awful
Now-
as GW is now, they're better than they were like from
Oh yeah.
from the year like 2000 until around.
Oh, the internet. You know,
2011.
there's a lot of good and bad and odd things that have happened, disruptive things that have happened with the internet. The internet, one of its, I think, undeniably positive benefits has been that businesses across the board have to behave much better than they used to. Because if they don't, it's going to be spread everywhere.
Yeah.
And, you know, Greg and I, my IT guy, he's my best friend from college. I mean, we go each other's best friend. And we were talking about the good old days before the internet when, you know, you'd buy a video card, you'd buy a SCSI port for the hard drive, this, that, and the other thing. And the things, even though they were all theoretically compatible, they wouldn't work. You know, and so you'd call the video card manufacturer. Well, we've never heard that complaint. It must be those other cards. And you get that exact response from every single other person.
Yep.
You know, and the amount of time and energy that you spent arguing with them, fighting with them, and all that crap, and trying to figure, well, we'll put these two work together, okay, but all that crap. That stuff ended when the internet became a thing. Although it did take a few years, because instead of we've never heard that before, you just Google it, and what do you know? 1 million other people are having this same problem that tech support said they've never heard of. You know, so yeah, I think that all companies have to behave more reasonably. Now, you know, there have always been businesses like Walmart that were smart enough to know that there was big money in behaving reasonably. You know, I mean, the Walmart, I remember 20 years ago, my grandmother took back a microwave, my little 80-something-year-old grandmother, took back a microwave that she had for over a year that she burned up, right? It was out of warranty. She took it back to Walmart. They took it back. And I remember, why would they do that? You know, I said, are you kidding? The advertisement they got from my grandmother was worth the $15 the damn thing probably cost. You know,
dude, time was you could go into Sears with a broken Craftsman tool.
Oh, well, those are guaranteed for life.
And just like broke this. Okay.
Yeah.
Walk over.
Yeah. No,
one.
Craftsman hand tools. Now, not their power tools. I found out. I built a wood shop full of Craftsman power tools, only to find out this is embarrassing for a lawyer, right? Like, God. Yeah, turns out the lifetime guarantee doesn't attach to their power tools, only their hand tools. At the time when Sears was a thing, they've sold that brand off.
It's Home Depot, I think, has.
I heard that. I vaguely remember something about they were going to make them in China, and it's like, oh, you've got to be kidding! And maybe they started making them here again or something. I don't know.
Yeah, if they're made
no,
in
that
China,
was
just throw them
that was
away.
but that was the thing. No, I mean, if a Craftsman tool broke, and they rarely did.
Mm-hmm.
Be fair, they were well built industrial grade tools, but yeah, but I didn't make an issue out of it because, you know, being a lawyer, you thought maybe, I don't know, I would have you know, not made that assumption.
So Cam 1138 has a question here. I've wondered how older material predating the OGL and D20 has been reprinted. Well, I think that's just because the IP now belongs to Wizards and they can do what they want with it.
They can, and I've wondered about the same things. I'm just going to pick something. What was it? Keep on the Borderlands.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but is that trademarked? Because you can't copyright titles, but you can trademark them. I can't. It's probably not trademarked. It's probably just, you know, they assert. You know, they have whatever copyright they have because, you know, people have done beyond the Keep on the Borderlands.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if that was a trademark, not only would it be defensible, they would need to defend it because you can wind up abandoning your trademark if you don't make the thing. So Copyrights are designed to protect the creator. Trademarks are designed to protect the public. That's a key distinction. Trademarks are designed to protect the public from being confused about who they're actually buying the goods from. So that's why, for example, you can have two identical business trademarks, but in totally separate sectors. And boy, I hate to have to explain that to clients when they come up with a clever name sometimes. Because I get a phone call, they're using my name. It's like, what are they selling? Okay, that's not even vaguely related to what we're selling. And when you get a trademark, you have to state the categories of use, and they're very specific. We're selling written gaming materials. That level of specificity, okay? And so that may be the answer right there, but I've wondered about that myself. I guess I don't know.
I just assumed it was because they bought TSR lock, stock, and barrel, and it belonged to them.
Well, no, they can. Yeah, I mean, when Wizards bought TSR, they got all of TSR's assets,
right? So
they could do it. But there are third parties, not Wizards of the Coast. Is it Goodman? Maybe some game. I think it's Goodman.
But it's my understanding that Goodman is like that with Wizards of the Coast. They didn't we're going to do this. They went to Wizards of the Coast and said, "Hey, we'd like to do this." And
even if they didn't require their permission, we're back to the thing. That was a smart move on Mr. Goodman's part.
Yes,
because once again, look, if you're in the room with the 500-pound gorilla,
you don't want to have that fight. A banana. You don't just assume
you don't want to have that fight,
no.
Even if you can win it, or that's the thing. So that would explain that very clearly. Because were I in the situation, I would want my exact advice to a client would be. Let's say they came to me and said, "Ty, can we use this title?" And I look it up, and it's Wizards of the Coast, and it's not trademarked, and it's not actually copyrightable. I would say, yes, legally, but I think it would be much wiser to at least ask them for permission and see what they would want, because I wouldn't want to have to prove this at court against their literal hordes of lawyers.
I have always maintained that. I have always maintained that saw that, it's easier to ask forgiveness than permission is bullshit.
It's not bullshit at all, but it has its limits. It's highly contextual.
When you're juggling the live hand grenades of, can I publish my own D&D stuff? I say it's bullshit.
Oh, sure. Well, yeah, you've already described yourself as someone who's highly risk intolerant when it comes to the law. For you, absolutely, it's bullshit. There have been any number of times where a client has said, I want to do this. Are we going to get in trouble? And I said, well, probably.
Now, if I hit a $500 million Powerball, dude, first I would be phoning you up to retain you, and second of all, I would be saying, "Come at me, bros. Here's my modules. Come at me."
So here's what the business lawyer in mind, what I do. Okay, and this is I client calls and says, "We want to do this. Are we violating this contract? Are we violating?" And it's like, yeah, we probably are. Because see, a lot of times the answer is actually we probably are, not we are, because the real world just isn't as predictable and as easily, in all likelihood we are, because what we're doing, a court would probably say that falls under this prohibition. It doesn't actually specify this activity, but
Okay.
But then of course the client's like, well, dang it, I really want to do that because there's all this money. And I go, well, okay. Let's say it is a violation. What are they going to do? And then we engage in a wargaming session, me and the client. Typically the client knows the other party much better than I do, so he has a better grasp of their tendencies. Mm-hmm. They're pretty reasonable, or all right, well, okay, if they do sue, what is their best day in court going to get them? What are their damages? Well, I can usually quantify that to an amount. It's going to be about $100,000. How much do you say you were going to make off this? We're going to make $1 million. Ew. Well, in that case, the business decision might very well be go ahead and do it, and we'll deal with them when they complain, if they complain, because there's enough money available that everybody can be, because in business, with exceptions like Lorraine Williams, for example, and sometimes I do believe Games Workshop, although being a public company, they've got their own set of incentives and crap. In real normal functioning business, it's all about the money. There's not a single business issue that money can't solve. It's the universal solvent. It's the universal healing potion, and that's why so many business disputes never go to court, because at some point the business owners go, we could just work this out and stop paying these lawyers. Usually these damn lawyers is how they say it. Because we extract a price. And it's like, well, how about, what if we split the difference and we agree to send you some more business that we can both make money on? Gosh darn it. We may not love you, but, but no, there have been any number of times where my advice to the client has been, okay, this is the risk, this is the reward. My opinion, because my clients don't let me weasel out. They want to know, okay, yeah, what should we do?
Right.
Well, that's a business decision. And no, that's not what I asked you. What do you think we should do? Well, if it were me, this is what I think I'd do. This benefit, this risk, yeah, you do it. Now, on the other hand, the client says, yeah, here's the thing. We do a lot of other business with them, and if they get angry, they're going to pull all that other business because they're going to feel like we betrayed them. Well, okay, we don't do it then necessarily, right? I mean, it's all balancing. Everybody has this view of the law as this binary yes or no thing, because all the TV shows are about criminal law, because criminal law is the most exciting. I really want to see the episode of whatever legal show where we talk about the ins and outs of a licensing agreement. Yeah, that's going to be gripping, as opposed to a double homicide.
Yeah.
Well, see, the criminal law is actually a lot more binary, although not as much as people think, because TV simplifies everything. But in the real business world, yeah, it's ambiguous in a lot of times. But here's the thing: if I ever advise a client on a course of action and it blows up, I'm going to get blamed for it, and rightly so. I don't complain about that. Comes with the territory, you might say.
Oh yeah. So let me see. Oh, greetings from Fat Dragon Games. Says all hail Ty.
Hey man, how the heck are you? Got
see.
Those airplanes up finally. I believe that's who I think it is. I hope I got it right. Well, if you are who I think you are, you will know the insanely awesome gifts are now displayed on a wall. I will get a picture and get it to you at some point.
Very cool. And
if you're not that guy, well, you know my intentions.
Let's see. I'm not sure what this is a reference to. I wonder if back in 2012 WotC would not step in. Actually, that is our property. Not sure the context on that, passerby.
Well, what happened in 2012? When did D&D 4th? D&D 4th came out like in
07, yeah.
Boy, that really was an unforced error, that deal.
Ooh, hell yeah.
Yeah.
That Wizard, man. Oh God.
Literally when someone who's just simply reprinting your open source stuff is outselling you, that has to go down as a fiasco.
Yeah.
Is it New Coke or the Edsel? No. Yeah. In the context of our hobby and our marketplace, I think it is the gold standard of marketing fiascos. But anyway. So what happened in 2012? Was it D&D 5th they were working on at that point?
I'm not sure. Let me see.
I don't know the
Passerby is saying, let's see, I'm not seeing all your comments. Oh, I think this is, Passerby, is this in reference to the Caius? The band claimed trademark on the name. The band dissolved in 96. One member started a band called Queens of the Stone Age in 2011. The other band members of Caius resurrected the band as Caius Lives. Josh Holmes sued the people of Caius Lives and won. And I wondered back in 2012.
You're going to have to get a lawyer to, yeah.
Yeah, that's...
Bands can get in the most twisted, crazy, insane legal disputes. There was actually an episode of LA Law on that, by the way. I think it was it the Spinners? There was some really good group that reformed, and the old members fought with the new members, and blah, 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 and, you know, and all that. And, of course, LA Law had the Christmas ending where they all came together, and the judge said, you know, you both can be them, and people will know the difference. And yeah, that happens in the real world. Yeah, bands. Oh my God, they're not attacking bands. It's part of the business model and just the nature of the thing. You know, bands are always this fluid, amorphous thing where members are falling in and falling out, and unless they've got good lawyers involved at the get-go, who owns what is like, oh.
I'm reminded of a story that John Kay, the frontman for Steppenwolf, told, that he saw an ad in a newspaper, and this was like back in the 90s, so it wasn't far that removed from the late 60s when Steppenwolf, you know, they had a few big hits, and he saw an ad in a local music zine that Steppenwolf is performing at this outdoor music festival, and he was like, we are? And he called up a couple of people who'd been in the band with him, and they're like, I have no idea what this is about. So he went out, watched them perform, said, yeah, they were okay. And then they were kind of doing a meet and greet and walked up and just chatted with the band for a while, and they had no idea who he was.
What did he do about it, I wonder?
I don't remember what the denouement was, but yeah, I mean, he's standing there talking to a band performing as Steppenwolf, and I think what it had come down to is like one of the band members that they'd lost contact with had kept doing a Steppenwolf gig for a while, and they kind of gave it a hand wave, yeah, whatever. And the people that he gathered together called Steppenwolf, he left, and they just kept going on, and then other people joined the band. And the people that worked with a guy who was in the original Steppenwolf, they left. So by the time he sees Steppenwolf performing, it's like people who knew the people who knew the people who knew the guy who had been in the original Steppenwolf band after the original Steppenwolf had broken up.
There you go. And how many guys getting together in a garage practicing and doing this stuff and playing some dinky club somewhere go, you know, we really need to get a corporate attorney involved right now to determine who owns all the intellectual property.
What one?
Precisely no one.
No, one. Gene Simmons of Kiss.
Well, yeah.
That's
it.
He's otherwise, no.
He's actually an amazing businessman.
Yeah.
Totally independently. Keith Richards, by the way, is also another one. Everybody, you know, we always make fun of Keith Richards. Read his biography. It's quite interesting. He was a very good businessman. I assume still is.
I'll check.
He's never going to die. So, no. I mean, you know, all the stuff we're talking about, I was reminded of the Jack Daniels. Jack Daniels sent a cease and desist letter to an author some years back. And the author had written a book about Jack Daniels. It was some kind of, I don't remember what the precise contours were, but it was a book about but his cover, and I think it was self-published, at least that's implied. His cover used the Jack Daniels logo, the trade dress, you know, and all this. And their counsel, I absolutely, you know, hoist a tankard, you know, raise a glass, whatever, to their lawyer for handling it in the classiest, and by the way, business smartest way I've ever seen. Because the cease and desist letter said basically, hey, you're using our intellectual property. And, you know, we appreciate the fact that you're a big fan and we like your book, but we have to protect this. This is part of our corporate identity. If we don't, we could lose it. And so we need you to stop. However, we would be happy to purchase any remaining copies that you have on hand. If you want to talk about that, we would entertain that. We'd even, we'll even help you come up with a cover that doesn't infringe our intellectual property.
That's classy.
But we think would be appropriate for you. But we need you to. We really do need you to stop. And I mean, that's not word for word, but that really is almost the way they said it. Now, compare this to an obnoxious cease and desist letter I got one time about Nick, of all things. And he went over this on his show, so I'm not disclosing anything.
Okay.
But this obnoxious IP lawyer, I suspect, had been sent an email by certain people that aren't friendly towards me with a bunch of allegations that I was selling their gear and stuff, that I was using a particular term that they claimed to trademark over. Fear of the beard. That was the specific
Fear of the beard.
thing.
I
I was trying to remember what it was. Yeah,
I remember the fear of the beard.
Which I never. That was something somebody else came up with, and I never one time produced anything or anything else. Nick did. So I get this just in your face, obnoxious, overbearing letter. I represent, and so I picked up the phone, called her. I'm one of those people. I prefer face to face if possible. If it's going to be a tough conversation, I want to do it face to face. If I can't do it face to face, I want to do it by phone. Email is the last resort for me. I don't say things to people in writing that I wouldn't say to their face, and I just find that that's a better way to resolve contentious issues, one way or the other. So I called her and I said, "Hey, I'm Ty Beard, and I got your letter." Mm-hmm. That's kind of answer. I said, "Well, first of all, you're mistaken. I haven't done any of these things. I don't know where you got your information, but you can plainly see on our website that we offer nothing for sale." Although we probably should. That was there. I got the letter. But, we really ought to offer some of our bling for sale. Somebody might buy it. But up to that point, I was in sort of a kind of funny, because what I thought probably happened was the client came in, blew her head up, and she just fired off a letter to get the client satisfied. And that happens. And I wasn't, but she got kind of bitchy with me about it. And I said, okay, well, apparently we're not communicating. So let me explain this to you. Your letter is completely, embarrassingly dead wrong. I didn't do any of these things. My firm hasn't done any of this. And what's really disturbing is you could have verified that by a 30-second review of our website that you apparently didn't do. So here's the thing. Tell your client to back off, because I will absolutely take it very poorly if you send me this again. I trust that I'm sufficiently clear on this. Well, well, who is Nick Recato? I said, I'm actually not obliged to tell you anything about him, but I will. So I did. Well, what's your relationship with him? Again, I'm not obliged. He's a friend of mine. Well, he needs to stop. I said, yeah, let me offer you some advice. Don't bleep with him. It's not gonna work out like you think it's gonna work out. I said, he's razor sharp, and he'll absolutely impose a cost on you that your client is not going to be happy with. Like what? I said, I don't know. I said, but he's that good. So, a friendly word. Don't bleep with him. Well, of course she took my advice, right?
Right. Of course she did.
Yeah.
I remember this.
Yeah. So she says the same kind of cease and desist by the time I had talked to Nick. And, you're going to be shocked, but gosh darn, it played out exactly like I predicted it would. I'm not sure, but I think actually the client wound up finding out that he didn't even own the trademark. Now imagine if in a hypothetical alternate reality, she had picked the phone up and called and said, "Hey, Ty, I'm the lawyer for so-and-so." And I said, "Oh, yeah, I like them. I've seen them on TV. Yeah, we got a report that you were selling this trademark stuff. Is there anything to that? I didn't see it on your website." "No." "Oh, okay. Well, I apologize for wasting your time." And I said, "Oh, no problem. Let me guess, the client came in and heard from somebody who heard from somebody. Yeah, and we'd laugh about that, kind of thing. And that'd have been the end of it. But no, we had the posture. And, I remember the great Deion Sanders when he became a Dallas Cowboy, right? It's actually amazing how he went from being an obnoxious blowhard to a really fine gentleman and a good competitor, merely by just becoming a Cowboy. Anyway, yeah, well, anyway, but Deion did something. I remember reading about him because he really was the best cornerback, I think, in NFL history. I mean, he just took half the field away.
Yeah.
But he was so good that when he would walk with a receiver up to the line of scrimmage after he had batted the pass away or knocked it away or everything, he would say, look, when you stand like that, I know you're going to run this route, so you're going to want to switch it up. And he was absolutely sincere and honest. I mean, this wasn't a head game. He was that good. Well, this is kind of that same thing. When somebody says to you, look, I don't have a dog in this fight, but watch out. I don't know. Maybe you ought to listen to him.
Yeah.
Anyway, I suspect that if that lawyer didn't get fired, I imagine there were some stern words. All because the lawyer acted like a jackass. And, there are a lot of times where we have to do that. But I always prefer, if I can, to go in easy and conciliatory. Because the other thing is, guess what? Clients don't always tell you the whole story. Not that they're lying. They don't know the whole story themselves. It's always prudent before starting a nuclear war to find out the details. Because the thing I always say to clients and to my staff is, we can always start a nuclear war tomorrow. What we can't do is stop it once we've started it. So let's don't just jump to DEFCON 1. Let's, be prudent. But I have no idea how we got to this digression.
Oh no, that's why we're talking about.
Trademarks and stuff.
Yeah,
but
good
but I commend.
And bad.
I'd hire that attorney in a heartbeat if I needed a trademark attorney and she was available.
Nice.
I just because that is the absolute. And the thing is, yeah, sure, management had to approve that, and it might even have been management's idea. But she had the skill to put it in a form that was just a work of art. So, anyway, I don't know if you happen to be watching this show, whoever you are, well done. Bravo.
Yeah, I don't think my audience is quite that big, but hey,
you never
knows.
One never knows. Maybe one of her family members are watching. I do believe it was a she. If
Excellent.
you can say that anymore, but.
So Paul had a gaming question for you. Did you get a chance to go to North Texas this year?
I did, and I had a blast.
Says I got to get down there one of these years and quiz one of those old gaming big brains about the long ago. We can always ask questions here, Paul. And
we'll talk about that until. Why, we'll tell you everything you want to know and more.
Yes.
It was actually kind of interesting because I went down and I made myself a promise. I said, okay, I'm actually going to do some gaming. I'm not going to sit around and party and socialize like I've done at every one of the other 20 some odd conventions I've been to in my life. And so I went down there and I did. I ran Traveler a couple times. I didn't play anything, but I met a lot of people. I met a lot of people that I'd been like Eric Tinkar. He is a riot. We seem to have bonded mainly in hassling Zach over a product that we want to develop that we are certain tens, maybe 20s of people would want to buy. And we can't understand why he's not interested in publishing it, but we'll keep working on it.
You too can make hundreds of dollars a year in the world.
Hundreds of dollars, yeah. There are tens, maybe 20s of people.
How do you make $1 million writing role-playing games?
Start with 5.
Invest 2.
But no, I had an absolute blast. It was
great.
That convention is, well, it skews mostly people, old fogies. So it's not official, but I mean it's small. It's small, but it's big enough. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, that's one of
the dealer room had high quality Yeah, there was one exception, but that he wasn't selling game stuff or anything related to gaming, so we couldn't figure out who it was. But the game, the vendors were high quality, had great selections of stuff, everything from the latest and greatest to, wow, I remember this when I was 12 years old.
Nice.
So yeah, it was a great convention, and Mike is just a wonderful host.
That's one of those I definitely want to get to one day.
Texas, I had so much fun. I stayed an extra day after it was over with just to continue to hang out with everybody.
Nice. Maybe rub elbows with you. Maybe we can drag Nick down.
Yeah, I'm gonna impose my will upon Nick and force him to come. I think to that because he would enjoy that.
You need to use some of that mentat logic and
And
leave him with no choice.
I govern him with a fair, light but firm hand when necessary.
You have to.
Yeah.
Well, I hear him talk like. I get it that Nick is really popular and that chats, even super chats, can get lost in the whirlwind. But damn it, if I could get one-on-one with that boy, and just give him a gentle shake and say, Nick, stop playing new D&D, play old D&D.
I know. I'm on that.
Okay, all right. So you got that covered. You're going to get him back into 8, or you're going to get
I actually popped open the system reference document because getting ready for this talk,
Mm-hmm.
And I was looking at that and I was going, there's a lot of old school ideas in here, but why did they put that crap in? That other crap, I mean. You could strip the 5th edition SRD down into a very nice old school role-playing game, and that might be the way to go to lure the 5th edition folks. I don't know. Some of those races I just can't abide. You're not bringing a dragonkin into my campaign. Sorry.
No.
Tieflings, I don't like the name, much less the backstory.
Yeah.
I don't care what the story is. They're not coming in my game.
They're in the Monster Manual too for 1st edition AD&D, but they're there as hit points or experience points.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of running monsters.
No.
Never have been.
No. Look, you want to run a
monsters?
Cube, half paladin, drow.
Well, and I think we've grumped about this. In fact, do I have my cane where I can wave it around? I've got a cane somebody sent me from one of my. I was in the middle of a rant on Nick's show about something.
Old man yells at cloud.jpg.
No, it was even better. That best super chat I've ever read. It was, can we start a GoFundMe to buy Ty a cane that he can wave around? Well, I thought it was hysterical, even to the point suggested Nick that he might do it, And out of the blue, one of the viewers, who's very very good guy, sends me a very nice cane. So I took it to the convention. It's somewhere in I haven't actually unpacked from the convention, but yeah. Right. But anyway, let's imagine that I'm waving my cane, because I think you and I have already waved our canes about this.
Yes.
But you don't need 72 different classes and subclasses and prestige classes and all that crap. You need the guy that fights, you need the guy that spells, you need the guy that heals, and you need the guy that thieves.
Exactly.
That's it. So. And you don't actually need all 4 of them. You can adventure just fine without a magic user. For
Ty, are you suggesting that we don't need monks?
No. Monks fight.
Okay,
I am a child. I am a child of the 70s.
Same.
When Kung Fu was everything.
Kung Fu is why there are monks in D&D.
I also am. I had 8 years of training in Taekwondo from the ages of 12 to 20. I grew up in East Texas with the name Percy.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And my parents started me a year early to school, so I wasn't as big as my classmates. Yeah. That guy in the Johnny Cash song had nothing to complain about. I won't talk about it on the show, but I'll just tell you. But I did meet someone that had an even worse name, if you can believe that.
Oof.
Yeah. Anyway, but so martial arts were very important to me. again, on that digression. So I've been watching the original series Kung Fu with David Carradine.
Nice.
And, okay, first of all, surprisingly, I always thought it was a good show when I was a kid. It actually is a good show. And Carradine does do a really good job with the role. It's very, but its pacing could best be described as languid. Maybe it's a very, it's a very, yeah. So I bring my daughters in and I'm like, hey, honey, ever watch Kung Fu? And they're like, oh, no, Dad, it's one of them old shows, right? Yeah, but it's really good. It's like, I can see it in their eyes. Like, oh, well, we love you, Dad, so sure. I fired up the pilot, which is an hour and a half long. And we get about an hour in, and my beautiful daughters, whom I love and who I know love me, the oldest goes, Dad, I mean, I like this, but does it ever get interesting? I said, honey, look, you're released. It was a fair shot. You made an honest effort, and that's all that I could ask of you. So it's just like, oh, thank God.
Yeah, my daughter, my older daughter, 18, is not a big fan of Magnum PI, so I've been through the same.
Oh yeah. No, well, again, that's right. Some things just don't. A surprising number of things do translate, but Kung Fu and Magnum PI aren't one of them. I don't think the A-Team would translate well either. Probably. No. I don't. But Kung Fu. So yes, fine. Your cheap shot on the monk is acknowledged and even hat tipped. But other than that. Other than that. Well, I remember back when I ran D&D a lot. I remember somebody coming in and wanting to be a samurai. I said, okay, you're a fighter. Instead of a broadsword, you're wielding a katana.
Yeah. And a katana is just a bastard sword.
Yeah, or odachi, or whatever. Yeah, that was an easy accommodation. Well, yes, but what's the but? Yeah, samurais are better at swords. Okay, well, if that might be true. Of course, their armor wasn't as good.
Exactly,
so
their armor.
If you don't wear anything, say beyond the equivalent of chainmail, I'll give you a +1 to hit and +1 damage. Well, oh wait! I mean, even when I was in college, I knew. So I could always accommodate these player requests for odd character types within the existing classes because they are gigantically broad. I want to be a bard. Okay, describe what a bard is. Well, it's an entertainer. He's kind of a thief, and he's kind of okay. So you're a thief who can sing and entertain and make money doing that. What thieving skill do you give up to because you're spending all the time playing your are you maybe just a level or two less than that as a thief? What's the offset? Okay, finding roof traps. I don't need that. Okay, great. House rule right there. Instead of finding roof traps, you can play very well and entertain and all that kind of stuff. And do you have a charisma that's high enough to justify being a bard? Yeah. Okay. I never, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I got a buddy of mine. He plays in our Monday night AD&D Discord game, and he's been running an AD&D bard. Like, he got the stats, and he grinded through fighter, grinded through thief. He did it.
For the youth, there was a bard option in the player's handbook, but it was insane.
Yeah.
What was it? You had to be a fighter until some ridiculously high level.
Well, start as a fighter. Minimum change point was 5th. Switch to thief, and at 5th level thief, you became a probationary bard of 0. You were basically a 0 level bard, and from that point forward, you start leveling as a bard. But you also get druid spells in addition to all the stuff you picked up as a fighter and a thief. And you could, as your levels progress in Bard, you gain the ability to identify magic items and charm monsters with song and rally your troops with song.
Yeah, and two comments in my campaign, and I ran extended campaigns in several instances for years, 2 years, not 10. You're never going to get a character that far. I mean, because I would typically start everybody at third level. My campaigns had a pretty high mortality. It was a high risk, high reward kind of situation. And to get to ninth level, yeah, we had some ninth level guys. But you just you need a lot of help from the dungeon master to do it. And of course, that isn't actually really what anybody wanted to do when they just wanted to be able to sing and play and charm people.
Yeah.
Well, okay. I mean, if you want to be a spell casting bard, okay, you're a druid. But instead of learning how to use a scimitar, which that was one of the great things about a druid, they were a cleric that could use a D8 weapon, and that was that mattered.
Yeah.
Okay, you can't use a scimitar; you have to use a smaller, easier handled weapon. But instead, you're now a really good singer. You do have the charisma now, don't you? That was a style. One of the epiphanies that I had, and I don't know if someone told me this. They probably did. I don't think I was that smart. But one of the epiphanies I had early on. Well, first of all, I had extraordinarily talented DMs that introduced me to the game, which I simply can't exaggerate how important that was to making me what, according to everybody, apparently I'm a good DM. But I figured out early on that damage is just damage, for instance, right? Mm-hmm. That the players care about the description of the damage, but they don't, in game terms, it doesn't really, damage is damage, right? And so, for example, we had somebody that wanted to run a wizard, magic users, we called them back in the old days.
Yes.
And I still call them magic users.
Same.
I'm sorry. Why they were called magic users originally instead of wizards, I could not tell you. But anyway, but he wanted to run a magic user, and I tried to dissuade him from that because low-level magic users in AD&D are pretty pointless, especially in a high-risk, high-reward, lots of combat campaign like mine. And he's like, no, he insisted. And I'm like, well, okay. Can't throw you out there with your, was it 2 spells at third level?
One spell
at first. Yeah, because if nothing else, I always wanted people to be involved. So it occurred to me that one of the weapons that magic users could use, and often did use, was a dart. Throw a dart. Mm-hmm. You don't get to use darts in my campaign. But you have a spell called Fire Blast or something. I don't remember what the hell it called it. And you made it to hit roll just like you would with any other weapon, and it did the same amount of damage as darts. And that materially increased the involvement of the player in the game because he was throwing spells, and you could use it any number of times.
There you go.
Now, that had no effect whatsoever on game balance. It had the exact same effect in combat as if he was sitting back throwing darts. But whose conception of a wizard ever is, I'll throw 1 or 2 spells that are of, frankly, marginal utility, and then I'll throw darts? Literally no one. And so that epiphany hit me sometime in high school, actually. But in college, when I started running these colossal games, because word would get around, and we had access to a place where we had as many tables and chairs as we wanted and rooms to ourselves. It was the Campus Christian Center at Tyler Junior College. And God loved the director of that thing, because you remember that was back during the D&D satanic thing, and he had no use for that. So we had not only the willingness to spend all our time gaming, but we had the place to do it. And so anyway, so I just would adapt AD&D on the fly as needed to fit whatever things that players wanted. And my players ultimately began to understand that, okay, Tile let me do what I want within reason. Did I mute, or did it just?
No, I can hear you.
Okay, I think I bumped my mouse and it moved over the mute button or something.
Oh, okay. No, you're fine.
but he's there. I can ask Ty to let me do stuff, and he probably let me do it. Now he's going to impose some kind of offset.
Sure.
And that shakes out we didn't call them min maxers in those days. I don't remember what we did. What did we call
Munchkins?
No, even Munchkins that came along in the late '80s, at least in our around our parts. We just called we called them Longview Rollers. Longview is a town near Tyler, and we had a couple of people show up at our campaigns. One of them we called Crazy Robert. We actually had Weird Bob and Crazy Robert in our group. At the same time.
Keep them straight that way.
Well, yeah, they were very different. Crazy Robert had a problem with cheating with his dice, and he wasn't good at it. It's like, forget the whole existential philosophical question of why you would cheat in a game, why you cheat for the same reason anybody else cheats. But he was terrible at it. And so rather than call him out, I and the other DM that ran campaigns, we just tortured him. Roll for initiative. He'd roll and snatch the 20-sided, but 20. 20. Darn. So anyway, the term the Longview Rollers got currency around. But anyway,
I like that.
Back to the original point though, is that AD&D was sufficiently capable in its original 3-book edition to accommodate any fantasy setting you care to accommodate with just the slightest amount of elbow grease from the game master.
Yeah.
But as we know, good DMs are fairly rare. And I think you can teach it. But I don't know that you can.
I open up the floor to questions about DMing a lot, and when at the local comic shop, my favorite local comic shop here in Orlando, which the next time, if you happen to wander into Central Florida, please let me know, because
the girls are on me something fierce to take another trip to Disney World.
Good.
When they were young, we did. I negotiated actually a large business deal one time on the dock in front of the Magic Kingdom.
Nice.
Well, the deal was supposed to be on hold, and it lit up while I was at Disney World. The client calls and says, "Hey, man, I'm sorry, but no problem." Out I trot. I come down from the treehouse. Guys, I'm sorry. It'll only be a minute. And the girl's like, "Yeah, sure." That's okay. They were always really good at making sure I paid the appropriate price.
Pay the wear
guild. That's an absolute promise. We're going to get to Orlando at some point soon.
Yeah, the next time you're in Orlando, we'll go to my favorite comic shop.
Because now my daughters have got young men with them, so that means I don't get to walk around with just them.
Yeah, so, my favorite comic shop also has in it my favorite bar, Vault 5421. They have a Fallout nuclear bunker themed bar.
Nice.
And
nice.
Todd and Anna are absolutely the nicest people you could ever want to
meet. We will allow us to buy each other a beverage, though.
Yes, we will.
That'd be a lot of fun.
But I go down there on free RPG day, and I run, it's a mini con for me. I'll show up when the store opens and leave it at midnight. But I do how to DM sessions.
Yeah.
As one of my time slots, I'll just be like, okay, ask me questions, and I try to impart that knowledge to people.
What kind of questions do they ask? What kind of questions do they ask?
It ranges, Ty, from the basic stuff like, what do I do about a troublesome player, to the super duper specific, you're gonna have to look in the rule book to get an answer for that, and everything.
Or you're just gonna have to bake something up and go with it.
And just everything in between. But I mean, the next time, barring I get sued by Wizards of the Coast for being an asshole or something, the next time.
Oh, let me tell you, I can't tell you the number of times in my career where I've had to actually, in one case, bang on the table and say, how many times do I have to tell you, being an asshole is not against the law? And it's not actionable.
But barring
The
anything
contract
like that,
allows them to be assholes.
barring
Sorry.
anything like that, the next time you come on, we're gonna set the legal stuff aside, I think, and just geek out about gaming.
Oh yeah, that's
because you're a game designer.
Well, I love. The thing is, I actually love what I do as a lawyer. I'm one of those, actually, unfortunately, fairly rare people that truly love the profession. I do, and it's a function of the kind of law I practice. But more than anything else, it's the clients I have. It's I had the amazingly good fortune that to be able to select the type of client I most wanted to work for. So, and very few lawyers ever are afforded that privilege. It was a stroke of luck. So I can geek out on the law too. But yeah, if you had 1 minute, roughly, I don't have a timer. But let's say that the Godfather calls you and he goes, "I've decided I want to run a game. You've got 1 minute to tell me how to do that." What would be the most important, critical advice that you would give?
I would grab my Dungeon Master's Guide and I would read the afterword that Gary Gygax wrote in the back. And that is, it is the spirit of the game, not the letter of the rules, which is important. Don't let a barracks room lawyer dictate the rule book to you if it goes against the obvious intent of the game. As you order your game with your campaign world first, rules next, adventure after that, and players last, you will be playing the role-playing game, whether it's Dungeons and Dragons or whatever, exactly as it's supposed to be played. That would be my 1 minute speech to Don Corleone before he puts on his wizard's hat.
Yeah, which is a glorious mental image. If I were asked that question, I'd say there's an 80% overlap between what I'd say. So I would add to it that you are an entertainer if you're a dungeon master. You're not a writer. You're not someone's mother or father. You're an entertainer. You're like the producer of a low budget television series that makes money. Well, what I mean is this: your number one goal is to ensure that your players are enjoying the game, in my opinion. Now, you got to be realistic. If they're enjoying it, but you're absolutely miserable, then don't do it, because DMing is hard enough if you actually like being a DM.
You're a player too. You're entitled to entertainment too.
Yeah. See, I'm one of those people. I rarely play. I have just always been the DM, and I prefer. I mean, I'm not against playing or anything, but so that's number one: is understand your role. Make your adventures the kind of adventures your players want to play. Okay, if they like hash and slash, serve it up on a giant buffet. You can throw some other stuff in there for variety, but give them what they want, because if they're having a good time, odds are you're going to have a good time. Then, to your other points, the rules are at best suggestions. Now, if you've got legalistic-minded players, you should probably do what I always do when strangers come to a game of mine, is I say, okay, let's get some ground rules down. This is my campaign, these are my rules, and you don't know all those rules, just like in the real world, we don't know all the rules. So, when I say that a green thing, or even when I say an orc is coming at you, you should never assume that orc is exactly as presented in the player's handbook. I can guarantee you he's not. My monsters are orders of magnitude tougher than their player's handbook components, and they have different abilities. So, using the knowledge of fine. I don't care if you read the player's handbook, couldn't care less. But don't object to something because the player's handbook says otherwise. Because if the players of the game don't laugh you out of the room, I will. It's if I make a ruling, I don't care if you say, look, I think you're wrong and here's why. I got no problem with that. I'll give it a fair hearing. But if I say, sorry, this is what we're going to do, take it like a man and move on. We'll talk about it afterwards. I'm not going to kill somebody over a genuine rules dispute. I don't, but at the same time, the game must keep moving at all costs. And, and sometimes it's as simple as that, having that conversation with your players that, these are the ground rules. I remember in college we played the heck out of Car Wars, and I always ran them. And the bickering got to the point, it was like, and it wasn't anything that any particular player did. We just sort of devolved into it. Why is he shooting at me? That other one's closer. And it finally reached critical mass, and they all came in for a game. And I said, all right, enough's enough. And I said, no more of this, because I'm not going to run this thing again. And everybody's like, oh, crap. I mean, to our discussion about the OGL, there are ways to communicate this that are going to be better received than others. I've often found that people just in general are much more likely to follow a rule or a procedure if they understand why. As long as it's not arbitrary, they're often good with it. So that's the thing, talk to your players, make sure that you know what kind of game they want to run, make sure that they know what kind of a DM you are before they ever pick the dice up. Because, at least then when somebody gets disgruntled, you say, look, you knew what you were getting yourself into. Stop whining. And unfortunately, if no one can die, there is no drama. In my opinion.
If you take the teeth out of the game and run,
there has to be a genuine fear of character death, or there will be no heroism.
Just so.
And you can't. And the thing is, you can't swag that, because if you do, your players will know it instantly, and they'll resent it if it favors one player over another. And well, that's great philosophy. How do you actually? So what if? Okay, stop right there. It doesn't get it. Stop. When someone does something in my campaign that stands a good chance of getting them killed, I see nothing wrong with saying, okay, you sure you want to do that?
Yep.
and they go, yep, all right. Then, let's see what happens. Roll 2 dice and you want high. Matt did that in my Traveler game. He pulled some just over the top ridiculous thing that should have gotten his ass killed 3 or 4 times. And I said, that very thing, he picked up 2 dice and he rolled an 11. I said, fair's fair.
Fair is fair.
But here's the thing, right? You find a way to put it on the player, because then there was no question that I somehow rigged it in his favor for the other players. There's no question in his mind that I was rigging it in his favor. Now, what that specific number was some gray. But if he rolled a 2, he was dead. If he rolled a 4, he's dead.
I know enough about Traveler to know that's...
Well, I didn't actually have a strong number in mind, right? But either extreme, the outcome is going to happen. If he rolls a 7 or an 8, it's like, but he did it again, and he rolled a 12 that time, I think. So, but that's what you do, right? Because if he dies, he's been treated fairly. He had every opportunity to not, but on the other hand, you got to let them get away with it if they roll well.
Ancillary to that, or rather parallel to that, I maintain you could take a group of experienced players, not experienced characters, and I'm going to make the distinction here for you and our viewers, and I think you'll agree. A group of experienced players, give each of them, I'll be generous, 2 6-level pre-gens, and a group of, say, 7 players, experienced players who have played AD&D, and say, I'm running Tomb of Horrors. They're going to make it through the module. Maybe not all of them, because there are
a better chance
few
than
monster encounters in there that are really, really brutal. It's literally rolling dice and trying to hit the things. I could take a group of inexperienced, inobservant players and give each of them 2 12th level characters. They're all gonna die before they get to encounter number 5.
That's the thing about the old school way of playing, and we're always in danger of turning into our parents. Yeah, in my day we did it right.
Yeah.
Oh, my daughters, I had a minor just cane waving rant over this phenomenon of DM screens that are portrait oriented and that are landscape oriented, not portrait. So not tall enough. I'm sorry, that just shouldn't be. And in a sanely ordered world, no one would be allowed to do that. Sorry, just I feel like that's the way it is. My daughter's like, why does it matter? And I'm like, it matters. Because it matters. But there was a distinctive style of play in the good old school campaigns that is very different than the style of play that I observe when I've seen, the youth playing the 5th edition games. And this is not where we're better than you or anything, because that old style of play didn't just magically spring into existence.
No,
you learned it from good DMs. Mm-hmm. Show me a bad DM. Most of the time, I'll show you someone that's never really been around a good DM and played in a good game.
Yep.
I think truly talented DMs probably have actual talent, but I think anyone can be a competent DM, by learning, and that's what I'd say to any of the 5th edition folks that might actually watch this is give AD&D a try and just see how it goes. You will likely be surprised. It will be, and I'd be willing to bet serious money it'll be more fun. And that's the goal of the exercise, right? This isn't this isn't moral superiority or anything. We're talking about how to have fun. And maybe you do enjoy spending 3 hours to create a character. I don't. More accurately, I can think of much more entertaining things to do in those 3 hours than fuss around with a character. One of my daughters made the observation too that, the longer it takes to create a character, the more reticent a DM probably is at killing it. Because in AD&D, you can create a new character in 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. And that's if you take your time. If you got to spend 3 hours futzing with a character, if he dies, that player's got nothing to do for the rest of the game.
Yeah.
Well, nobody wants that. It's a social game. I've had people roll up 2 or 3 or 4 characters in a single session. You have too, I know. Weird Bob would show up. Bob would show up with 6 characters at least already rolled up, just on a clipboard.
Just tear him off. Okay,
I got my new character, and it's like, okay, what is he? Well, he's let me look at it. That looks good. All right, hang on 1 second. Well, you walk into a room, and tied up in the corner with all of his gear is Bob. Over to you.
I DM'd a lot at Virtual Gary Con. I ran 5 games, 5 games in 4 days. And
how did we spend so much time running games when we were young? That's what I want to know. Because I am not that guy anymore.
It was a marathon, dude. Let me tell you what. That was my Iron Man, was doing 5 games in 4 days at Virtual Gary Con.
Man. But, I did 2 Traveler in 2 nights, and I was pretty,
Yeah, I did. And I had the full con experience, even though it was virtual. I was up late working on characters for the next game, because I know I had 6 months to prepare for the con. That means I spent the nights of the con preparing for each successive game.
Okay.
So I was up.
What is the length of time you have to prepare for a con thing? What does that have anything to do with how much time you spend and when you prepare?
Exactly.
Those don't seem to actually be related in any noticeable way.
But so
pardon me.
because I tend to snore a little bit when I come to bed extremely late. So I slept on the couch.
Wow, you really did get the full con experience.
I got the full con experience.
Sleep
Sunday
deprivation,
morning,
lack of preparation, sleeping on an uncomfortable surface.
Yes, either Saturday night or Sunday morning, our refrigerator broke, so my room.
So you got the food truck experience?
I got the food truck experience. I got a full con experience. But was it Thursday or Friday? Like Friday for lunch, I ran OD&D. And I had a small number of players for my OD&D game, which I would have thought that game would have been stormed. All my other games filled up, but I only had a few players for OD&D.
But not AD&D.
No, AD&D, eight full players.
Yeah.
And
I'm not surprised by that.
I had one of the characters died in the OD&D game, so I was like, let's stretch our legs, take 5 minutes, and roll up another OD&D character. And it was literally like 5 minutes. Boom, I'm done. Okay.
Yeah.
Take all the gear from your previous character, give him to your current character. You're wandering through the dungeon, and you bump into these two adventurers mourning their deceased friend.
There you go.
And we continue on.
And we continue on. Is it logical? No. But it's at least as logical as some underground maze filled with monsters and no toilets and no ventilation system.
Exactly.
There ought to be like old school naval battleship funnels sticking up out of dungeons.
That's where the monster lair is. How can you tell? Look at that's a 4 funnel
everybody would
dungeon.
Suffocate to death in this maze.
Meters deep. But
did you start with AD&D?
Okay, so this is a fun story I like telling, and I'll give you the brief version.
Okay.
The first D&D that I played was Keep on the Borderlands D&D. I bought B2 and nothing else because I didn't know you needed a rule book. There is enough in B2 that you can play D&D.
Is there now?
Tables for character, for 2-hit tables and saving throw tables for monsters and characters, spell listings, and equipment costs. There's no explanation of how to roll up characters, but having spoken to my chums in school, I understood that
you could fill the gap.
Yeah, I understood that characteristics went from 3 to 18. I didn't realize that 3 to 18 could be generated with 3d6. I've always been math illiterate, so how to generate a number from 3 to 18? Use a d20 and ignore 1s, 2s, and 19s and 20s. And that's how myself, my sister, and Tommy Miner from up the street played D&D with me as the dungeon master. And for about a year...
That's a great story.
For about a year
you ought to write up the rules extracted from B2. Limit yourself to the knowledge that you...
Will I get sued if I do it?
That's...
But
that's pretty good.
See, that's called a loop around. I'm looping that around time, bringing that back around.
Well, it's not illegal. Yes, but will I get sued?
So
I don't know.
The next D&D book I got was the Monster Manual for AD&D. Then I got a copy of the Dungeon Master's Guide.
Okay.
Then I got the Basic and Expert D&D sets. Now, note what's missing from that. The player's handbook. The player's handbook. But I played D&D throughout.
I forgot who I was talking to a few days ago that, you actually, the original D&D rules didn't really give you very much about how you actually play the game. And really, truly, the player's handbook and DM's guide and Monster Manual are reference books. They're not rule books. They're organized as reference materials, like an encyclopedia. Mm-hmm. So, it's a little bit of work to extract a game out of that.
Yeah.
Out of those books. I would submit, though, that you did effectively start with AD&D. See, I did too. I have no particular animosity towards OD&D or any of that stuff, but it really just isn't. I mean, in my world, fighters have D10 hit dice,
Well,
and clerics have D8s, and I mean, there are 10 armor classes.
If you own everything for OD&D, you're playing AD&D anyway, because Supplement 1 Greyhawk, Supplement 2 Blackmoor, Eldritch Wizardry, Gods, Demigods, and Heroes, and all the stuff that was published in the Strategic Review, which was TSR's
Oh, I'm sorry.
magazine.
I think I misunderstood. You're talking about actual white box OD&D.
Yes, I'm talking about actual white box.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about Basic Expert, the homes, or
those are their standalone things.
Okay.
Yeah,
I don't think I would be all that interested in playing OD&D. No, and no knock on you. I don't mean it that way. What I'm saying is that remember that OD&D is awfully sparse.
Yeah, it's a war game.
Yeah. Now, fair enough. I might be surprised how much fun that could be. I was actually quite surprised at how entertaining Swords and Wizardry, the little four-page handout that Frog God did. Obviously, in the hands of a good DM, anything can be played. I've played Chivalry and Sorcery first edition and had fun, but I had the best DM in the world. I've played Aftermath. I ran Aftermath, and it was fun. But that's another key piece of advice I'd give is make everything as transparent as possible to the players. And what I mean is, don't ask them what rules they're using. Just what are you going to do? And you handle the math behind the screen to your best ability. It's not always possible to do that, but you make every effort. And they rolled a hit, you look up whether or not they hit. Don't let them do that. Don't make them do that.
Yeah, no, I try and keep 2-hit rules. I play those close to my chest anyway.
Yeah, well, just in general though, because if you'll simply focus on what do you want to do, and they tell you, you figure out on the spot, right? What's the best way to resolve that? Do not break that rule book open to look that up. You figure it out. Now, after the game's over, go take a look and see if there's a rule covered.
Right. Now,
let them do it.
Yeah, my Monday night game is 11 people.
That's
one of these nights. I would love to have you guest play with us.
I don't oppose playing. I just always gravitated towards the DMing.
I will. I'll send you the info offline, but if you want to just dip in and play a session or two, I think it would be a stone groove. But
I'm trying to do more of that.
With 11 or 12 players, I don't have time to stop and argue rules. We have 3 hours.
No.
My game ends
at
1 o'clock on Tuesday mornings for me is when my game ends, because 90% of my players are in the middle of the country or the West Coast. I have 3 players on the East Coast with me.
Okay, so yeah.
So, I have developed tools and I have found tools for AD&D for the computer. Like somebody made an HTML sheet that is the entire first edition AD&D spellbook.
Oh, oh man, that's great. Search, find.
Yeah, it's
yeah.
And like when you go to a spell, and oh god, Gary, I loved you to death, dude, but this drove me up the wall. You find, hi, Cat Rocha.
Works the same as this other spell.
Yeah, exactly.
God, would you just write it again?
This is similar to the spell Protection from Evil by the Cleric. Okay, flip. Yeah, now
that was
has hyperlinks, so you just click it and it pops up or pops down to the appropriate spell. That helps. And I copied. Do you remember the Dungeon Master's adventure log?
Yes, I do.
I copied their spreadsheet layout into an Excel spreadsheet for character stuff.
It had a bunch of really good.
I no longer ask my players, how many hit points you got? What's your armor class again? Have you got a magic weapon? I have it all in front of me.
Yeah.
Even if a player...
And if you're running a tabletop game, you should have that in front of you as well.
Yeah.
It's not that hard.
Yeah, exactly. So I have all those tools, and I can fire through adventures. And earlier today I had a dear friend of mine on, and he had asked me last night when I was setting things up for our meeting today. He's like, "Wow, you have 11 yeah, but like, so it's just like 99% combat because with 11 players, I guess, the role play element is diminished." I'm like, no, it's not, because I do the same thing. I do the same thing with 11 players role playing as I do 11 players in combat by going down the list. Okay, you're in the city of Greyhawk. James, what are you doing? Aurora, what are you doing? Tracy, what are you doing? Mark, what are you, and just boom, 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 boom. Down the line.
No, I don't see any link in size to combat. In fact, I would almost say it's probably, less well, with the mini, especially if you did all the miniature. You do theater of the mind, right?
Okay, so the camera that I'm on right now is a 4K Panasonic Lumix. It's on a boom arm, and it points at this table. And sometimes I will up. You can't see it, but up here over me from this wall to that wall are shelves of Dwarven Forge.
Okay.
And I will cover this table with minis and Dwarven Forge, set the boom to look at the table, and then pipe that out to the players in Discord. But a lot of it is like little stuff is theater of the mind. And if it's a map that's too big to fit on this 5-foot diameter table, then it's theater of the mind.
Yeah. Well, and the actual tactical rules, such as they were in the DM's guide, weren't difficult to run. I always did theater of mind because it kept the game moving, and it seemed to fit my style better. Although I ran Fantasy Trip for decades, and it's nothing but a tactical war game, so figure that out. But I think one valid criticism of D&D 3+ is the combats for me are just like, I'd rather pull my toes off.
Yeah.
They're too cramped. A little subtle thing. In the DM's guide, 10-foot wide corridors were strongly implied to be 3 spaces wide.
Yeah.
Right?
You can 3 men abreast standing in roughly a 3-foot area.
Yeah. 3, give or take about a yard.
Yeah.
Now, is that actually realistic? Probably not, but who cares? Because it's staggeringly more interesting to have 3 abreast than 2.
Yeah.
If anybody doubts me, try me out on that. So the 1 square is 5 foot thing. All the rooms are claustrophobically small. And then you add these fiddly combat rules that appeared to me to always be, well, we wanted to rip Fantasy Trip off, but for one reason or another, we just didn't rip Fantasy Trip off.
Mm-hmm.
A game where weapons do an average of 5 points of damage and an average character has 40 hit points does not benefit from an insanely detailed combat system, because you're going to be at it all night long.
Yeah.
So with AD&D though, the rules are much more, you move this far, you do things, it's like halfway between, the modern D&D and theater of the mind. So I don't really object too much to that. It is a real good compliment to you that you're able though to do that and keep the game running, because that's the thing about all those fiddly combat stuff is that every minute you spend fussing with miniatures and terrain is a minute you're not moving the game.
And the one thing that I have maintained to my players is I just like how Dwarven Forge looks. It's
beautiful stuff.
Beautiful stuff.
I could be seduced. I could be seduced so easily. Miniature wargame designer.
But the thing that I emphasize to my players, look, I know that Stefan designed it with the flagstones are conveniently in grids and everything. It's not a board. You're not moving spaces. Okay? It's there because I think it looks really fucking cool.
Mm.
And
was it DM Scotty that had that whole D&D 5th edition or whatever without the grid, where you just measured? And that looked to me like a perfectly viable way to go. I don't know how much. So one time we adapted Fistful of Toes to hex grid terrain. I had a big box of GeoHex terrain from back in the day, and so GeoHex terrain was miniature wargame terrain, but it had like 2-inch.
Yeah, I have a giant storage tub of it up in my attic.
Yeah, I know, and I really wish it were still in production somewhere because we played Fistful of Toes with it, and the consensus was it was different but not really better than Measuring. But Fistful of Toes had long range weapons, so you counted more than one. You count 20 hexes, that kind of thing. We didn't see a clear superiority, but we also didn't really think it was inferior. And I ran it because it was such nice terrain and easy to put together. We used it a lot more. But that's it. I think I will want to play in one of your games because I'd like to see the tactical stuff done well.
Then I'm gonna
so rarely.
I'm gonna send you the info. I'm gonna send you the info, and I'll get you into my game.
Because I've rarely seen it done well. It would be a nice. You might change my mind on some things.
Well, I hope so. I'm gonna.
Man, I sure would hate to have to go buy a bunch of gorgeous miniatures and terrain and stuff. That would be
shucky darns.
That'd be terrible.
I had to I'm going to read some of these chats and then.
Oh yeah, golly.
I've got
I apologize.
My Labrador is looking at me through the doggy door, and if I don't go feed
boss, I'm dying here. What am I going to eat?
So let's see. We had a question. Let's see. A pointed comment from Mr. Magus says, the slower leveling and pointless lack of abilities, this is in reference to new D&D, to their desires to be overpowered heroes. Let me try that again in English. The slower leveling and lack of pointless abilities doesn't appeal to their desire to be overpowered heroes even at low levels, which is why old school D&D doesn't appeal to new school players. So
I do not agree with that assertion. Okay? Because guess what? We felt the same way back in the day. We invented the term Monty Hall Dungeon.
Fair enough.
Right? What we have to do, though, is not just tell them that it's better, but show them
it's better.
That's the deal. Because I don't know if y'all have noticed, but young people don't listen to old people very much. And we never did that, did we?
No. We were attentive. Sponges.
Because I've played AD&D with some young people, and they're like, "Oh God, this was fun," and that's more of a tribute to AD&D than it was to my DMing, which wasn't bad, but still.
I have never had a player leave an open table gaming event where I ran AD&D or even OD&D, and they said, "Well, this sucked."
Yeah, I suspect you'd agree with my observation, though. I think the problem is they have a real inferiority complex about whether or not they could pull it off, and that is tragic because they can.
Yeah,
it's just it's not that hard, but what are you going to do? Sorry, chat, I disagree. Dang, where's my cane?
Mr. May just says. I have my stepfather's copy of the AD&D Monster Manual 1 and 2, and he colored all of the illustrations. That formed a lot of how I picture the monsters. Carrion crawlers are red and pink in my mind. Well, right on, man.
Zach told me one time that a lot of the classic D&D monsters were basically the result of bashing several toys together.
Yes.
I'm going, well, that would explain the Beholder, wouldn't it?
Chinese.
I got a ping pong ball and some sticky.
Chinese dinosaurs.
Yep.
The dime store in Lake Geneva had a bag of Chinese dinosaurs.
And
Gary brought them home and said,
cut them apart.
This is an owl bear. This is a carrion crawler. This is a bulette. And
that makes perfect sense. Because they've done a great job of making the Beholder look so much more fearsome. But look at that original illustration.
I know.
In the Monster Manual, it's like, that looks like a ping pong ball with an eyeball drawn on it.
So I think question-wise, comment-wise, Paul says, GeoHex, they pushed that hard on us Battletech players back in the 90s. They did. I have Battletech books that GeoHex bought ad space in.
Well, it was such a perfect fit, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I mean,
I haven't used mine probably in 20 years.
No, I hadn't either. It's been probably decades too.
That about brings us up to the end. Anything in closing, Ty, you wanted to...
I enjoy these things, Bill. My life is...
I love having you on the show, man.
Well, this is the, when we reach... How old are you, roughly? I mean, I should ask. When you reach a certain age, a lot of your D&D friends and stuff disappear, because when we started, you and I, we were probably the younger people playing D&D. At least around these parts.
Yep.
D&D was for older people, kids and adults and stuff. Well, unfortunately, those people have all drifted into their 70s and late 60s and that kind of thing. And so I've lost a fair number of my old friends. So it's increasingly rare for me to be able to actually talk about this kind of stuff, right?
No, I understand.
So yeah, I think we all do. I think that's probably a fairly universal experience. So another good thing about the current state of technology and everything is, there's no way I'd ever met you. We might have met and hoisted some at a con or something, but we never would have had these kind of conversations. It just wasn't possible.
Sure.
But so I enjoy these live streams a lot.
Well,
maybe that's a comment on how sad and pathetic my life is.
No, it's not, because I do these every day, and if that's coming on every once in a while is a statement on a pathetic life, I do these every day. And I realize how condescending that sounded as I blurted okay, claw it back. Didn't mean it quite that way. I didn't take it as condescension.
Yeah, but no, it's that was a huge part of our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a lot of fun.
Yep.
And I mean, my God, I got friends my age that have bought Corvettes and had their I never had a midlife crisis because I took my toys with me.
Same. I mean, I
don't know a lot of gamers that have had midlife crises.
I'm half tempted to hop up and pan the camera around the room. This space of mine, I mean, I'm looking at a shelf over here that has the Snowspeeder, the Star Wars Snowspeeder toy that my pop bought for me for Christmas in 1980.
I know you got to go, but you got to hear this tiny little war story. Just
lay it on me.
Okay, so we had a sci-fi convention here in little old Tyler, Texas. I guess it's probably been maybe 8 or 10 years ago now.
Okay.
And because of my profession, the people I work for and stuff, I did go into the closet. I've said it a number of times. I'm now out. This is who I am.
I had the advantage because it was expected that an IT guy would be a D&D.
Yes. Y'all can get away with anything.
Yeah.
But, business lawyer, I'm trusting this guy with my life. Yeah. So anyway, we had a sci-fi convention, and my daughters and I went, as we always did. And we're at this sci-fi convention, and I look over, and here comes this very, very well-known, very prominent banker here in town. And he's a hell of a guy. He really is. He's just one of the nicest people, but he looks like the old-time banker. I mean, he has that presence and all this kind of stuff. And this and the sci-fi convention is spilling out into the main part of the hotel and stuff. And I'm going, oh shit, here comes Jim. This will be interesting. He walks up, he goes, hey, what are you doing? I said, well, yeah, there's a sci-fi convention here. My daughters and I are going. And he goes, oh. And he starts talking and talking and talking. And the conversation is just kind of going nowhere. Finally, it hit me like a ton of bricks. I said, Jim, you want to go in the convention? He said, yeah. He wanted to go to the sci-fi convention. And he's sitting here saying, here's this lawyer that I know. I don't want to get into this conversation with you about it. So we go in, and he bought, I don't know, he bought a stack of old Captain Marvel comic books from the 1950s when he was a kid, and was
wonderful.
just as delighted. I was like, and we had he sat with us while the guy that did all the original Star Wars expanded universe guys. Oh crap, what's his name? That author,
Timothy Zahn.
Don. Yeah. He had a thing, and we were. I mean, but you know that's one of my most favorite little mini experiences was, you know, we wasted probably 30 minutes jabbering about nothing when both of us wanted to go in there and see the nerd stuff.
That is sweet, man.
But yeah, but that's the thing, right? It's not an imposition at all to come on these things, because I don't get to talk about this kind of stuff a lot.
Well, the next one's going to be a lot sooner than the gap between.
Yeah. Let's don't. I've actually made a strong promise to myself that I'm going to start getting back into some of my hobbies and not just talking about them. Because that's always a danger with any hobby. Is you look at me and go, crap, I spent the last year talking about it but never actually, you know, did it.
Dude, listen to me, and I'll swear this before my audience over here. I have your contact deets, and Beard Harrison Bullock is, I can find y'all's info.
Yeah, you can find us on the
I can
interwebs,
Google you.
So.
I will pester you in your office. I will call the Sisters of Battle who work at your office and ask to speak to you and make sure that you're playing D&D.
Let's don't go quite to that step just yet. Yeah, we are getting all new Amazon Legion of Doom T-shirts, by the way.
That's cool. I like Sisters of Battle better, but it's your
but I came up with Amazon Legion.
Oh, okay, fair enough. You know,
so,
watch out for Jeff Bezos.
Well, it didn't take as well but for the men, because they okay, fine. What do the men get called? You're not just singling the men. I said, no, we're the steely-eyed missile men.
The steely-eyed missile men, yes, sir.
I liked it, but yeah, it just didn't really. It just didn't have the panache of Amazon. Yeah, let's don't do that. But
I'm not
please don't feel at all that you're bothering me by sending me invites and stuff. Just know that, you know, I'm not in control of my schedule a lot. I do actually have 2 large transactions that may happen but may not, and you know, but yeah, no, it's never. You know, I need to make sure Nick understands this too. It's never an imposition to ask me on the show. I enjoy it. I have a blast, as demonstrated by the fact that we've jabbered on for almost 4 hours now. 3 hours.
3 hours. Well, go bother Nick tonight and give him an endless hard time about playing old school D&D with us.
Got to find my cane.
Go find your cane and wave your cane at him.
You know, before I go, if there is a way to do a live stream of a game where the super chats could tell me various things to do to Nick, if we could ever, if there's a technology way to do that, let's talk.
I'm going to make it happen.
Because that would be fun.
you hear that, Nikki? Did you hear that, Nikki?
Yeah.
Ty just signed your own death warrant.
Yeah.
All
that could be fun.
That's good.
All right, brother. Well, hey, thoroughly enjoyed it.
Thank you.
And I hope if I did give you some at least vague comfort on the open gaming license.
You did.
It's you know, it's good stuff. It's, you know, it isn't perfect, but you know, it was.
You lifted.
And it was a brilliant.
You lifted a lot of weight off my shoulders.
So,
that
I could have.
Last thing I'm going to mention to you, and I'm mentioning this to everyone else too. Don't forget, when the channel hits 1,000 subs, I'm going to do a virtual mini-con. I'm going to celebrate 1,000 subs.
How does somebody find your channel? Is it on YouTube or?
Yeah, I'll just I'll send you.
Send me something and I will shill it tonight on Nick's show.
All right. I will. Let me see here. Well, how about this? I'll send it to you in Facebook chat. Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Right. Yeah, I've got to the point now where I just make me a little shill list. You know?
Yeah. So
I'm going to show because his audience is great.
They're fun. So we're gonna. But yeah, when we hit 1,000 subs, I'm gonna celebrate it by doing a mini convention. Probably a streamed mini convention. Streamed in that I will have Dwarven Forge and minis out where appropriate, because I'm going to run D&D, OD, or AD&D, OD&D, but I'm also going to run some sci-fi. I'm going to run some Twilight 2000, and just whatever I can cram into 12 or 14 hours of gaming for you guys.
That is an Iron Man promise. I I tip my hat to you on that one.
And I've got one other. My co-host on Wednesdays is an Australian fellow, and I want you to meet him one day. I'd love to get all three of us on the stream.
Yeah.
Kyle Schuant has written a man-to-man role-playing war game called Conflict. I'm going to send you a copy of it.
Oh yeah,
it's just that damn good. So Kyle's going to run some games. So I want that to happen. So tell your friends, click subscribe, click the bell. Watch the streams. If you like them, give them a thumbs up. If you don't like them, give them a thumbs down.
Bill, how do I tell somebody I'm going to be on Bill's show if y'all are interested in watching? How do they get to you?
I split my streams, which Facebook says, they don't allow it, but they do allow it because I use the software. So I can be found on Facebook as Bill Sylvie because it's open to the world. Because I don't do anything on Facebook anymore except stream.
Okay.
Because Facebook is communist.
They're unspeakably horrible.
Facebook
and I have a very active Facebook account.
Yeah.
But they're unspeakably horrible.
The last vacation I got from Facebook was because I said something bad about the Chinese Communist government. And it was at that point that I said,
"Get me started."
I'm not going to get you started.
What would be helpful though is seriously when we talk about I'm going to be on your show, send me some link that I can put on Facebook.
I will do that
for my friends and stuff to watch.
I will do that. I will give you links to put on Facebook and on Twitter and wherever you want to.
Okay.
So.
Well, hey man, you do know Eric Tinker, right? Are y'all?
I know him by name, and I think we shook hands at Gary Con in 2018. But I don't know him.
I have you confused with somebody else. I thought he was on a stream with you, but I guess it must have been somebody else.
No.
Well, if you ever get a chance, get to know him. He's a riot. He's good people. So, all right, bro. You have a good one.
Be well. Have fun on Nick's stream tonight, and I'll talk to you later, my friend. Take
Always do. See ya. Bye-bye.
All right, guys. Well, that was Ty Beard, attorney at law, putting to bed my fears about the open gaming license. So I'm going to go. I'm about to drop. My voice is cracking, and my dog is demanding dinner. So you guys have an absolutely wonderful evening. I love you. I mean it all. And I will see you later.